Hi there, my name is John Rips, or Steven, or Steve, or Jorbs. You can find links to like my Twitch channel and Discord and all that stuff below the video if you don't know who I am. I am a professional Slay the Spire player, I guess. For the last year or so, I've been streaming Slay the Spire, on average probably 5 hours a day, most weeks 7 days a week. I've played a lot of this game. In the past, people have very much enjoyed when I've taken time off stream to record a few runs and just go into immense detail over explaining everything that I'm doing. Because while I'm streaming on Twitch, like I'm an entertainer, I'm trying to talk to, the people who are viewing, I'm trying to make all the jokes, I'm trying to maybe rush through some decisions because the amount of analysis that they require isn't really appropriate for a run which I'm playing as a means of entertainment. So sometimes I play a run offline and I just go very slowly and deliberately and explain everything and try to explain all of the questions that are oftenly asked just one time for that run. Because also as a Twitch streamer, if someone is asking me a question that I get asked like 4 or 5 times a day, I'm not going to be able to give it a 5-minute answer, If I did that, then people who watched me regularly would just get extremely bored of hearing me answer the same question over and over again. But if we're going to have one run where I talk about everything in great detail, I can go ahead and answer all the different questions that tend to come up in this run and try to give them good answers. So that is what this is. I'm playing offline. This is, I'm not at work right now. This is my free time. And I'm going to be playing an Ascension 20 run. We're going to try to kill the heart silent. A lot of people have asked me if I'm going to do more overexplained runs for the heart now that the heart is out and stuff like that. And the answer is yes, I do want to, and here's an attempt at one. It takes a long time to learn all the stuff that's in this game. It's a very complicated game. It's a very difficult game. And so the reason I haven't done one of these yet is that I've still been learning stuff. So I've played almost 300 runs at this point at Ascension 20 since the heart came out. I've been trying to kill the heart every single time. These are my statistics from on my Twitch channel. So I can't actually read these. I've just set it up so that you can read them, but I should make it so I can read them too. Looks like I have about a 26% win rate overall, and with Silent, that's more like 30%. Silent accounts for 29 of my wins and 70 of my losses. So if I were to be able to win this run, I believe I would be 30 and 70 for exactly 30%. I think that like probably 35% is achievable with Silent with how the game is currently balanced. I'm not entirely sure where I'd say Ironclad was, probably 30 to 35% as well. And then Defect, I suspect, is like 25% to 30% achievable. I think my Defect's more like 20%, but I've been improving at Defect still. Whereas with Silent and Ironclad, I feel like I'm almost capped out in terms of the different things that I can learn. It's more a matter of applying stuff that I've already discovered better and better and better to improve my win rate with Silent and Ironclad at this point. And with Defect, I feel like there are still combinations of cards and relics that I'm exploring and understanding how to build together better. Defect's also just a newer class than Silent and Ironclad, and a more complicated class, so there's a bit more to learn, maybe. This is a great data readout from all of my runs that one of my viewers put together. It'll be linked below this video, and you can always find it in my Twitch chat by typing !data. So if you want to dive super deep into all sorts of details about my runs, these are all reports that you can like edit and go through and change and get more and more information or less and less information as you see fit, filter for defect only, filter for ironclad only, stuff like that. I'm not going to play around a ton with that right now. Okay. So, this is my 100th silent run on Ascension 20 going for the heart. It would be really nice if I just won this one. When I made Ascension 15 overexplained runs, I was winning like 90% on Ascension 15 or something, if I remember right. So it was like, yeah, I'll probably win this. I'll probably only have to do it once. Right now, knowing that I'm only winning like 30% on Silent for Ascension 20, it's like, well, if I lose in Act 2, am I going to publish this, or am I going to, am I going to just start from scratch again and say all of the stuff all over again a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time? A little bit scary. A little bit scary. Let's get into a run. As you land at the start of a Slay the Spire run, there are two super obvious pieces of information you have to take a look at. One is you gotta look at the map to see what Act 1 looks like. You gotta talk to the whale to find out what your whale bonuses are gonna be. But before we even look at those two information things we have to gather, there's another really important one here, which is your deck. Like your deck, your starter relic, your health, your gold. You have to understand what these do. And we don't really talk about that because it's the same every single time, but this is an overexplained video. I'm gonna tell you what I think about the Silent starter deck. And in order to do this, let's talk a little bit about some heuristics. So in order to simplify this game into something that I can talk about for you, and also in order to simplify it into something that I can think about for myself, I mean other people, this is how humans tend to think, I think, I use heuristics. That means I create categories to simplify all the stuff that's going on down into so that they're a little bit more palatable and a little bit easier to think about. And this spreadsheet that I've built is an oversimplification of what I'm thinking, for sure. In no way is this able to capture all of the stuff that I'm thinking, and that's why I'm going to talk for great lengths in this video to talk about other things that aren't captured by it. But it's a really good start. It's a great example of how to contextualize the value of different things in this game, I think, and a great example of what I'm thinking about as I'm making choices. So in order to think about any deck, but for right now the Silent starter deck, I can simply think about the damage output of the deck, how quickly it kills enemies, and I break that into single target and multi-target, and within that I stratify it into front-loaded and scaling. So an example of a single target front-loaded card would be Glass Knife, for example, a card which deals 8 damage to one enemy twice. Or, in this Silent starter deck, Strike. Strike is a single target front-loaded damage. I said that we were 5 out of 10 for single target front-loaded damage, and that's right now, that's in the context of the first floor. It's not like we would be 5 out of 10 for single target front-loaded damage once we got to Act 3. The requirements of Act 3 are going to be a little bit higher, but for where we're at right now, we're doing okay for single target front-loaded damage. Single target scaling, card like Deadly Poison. Multi-target front-loaded, a card like Dagger Spray. Multi-target scaling, a card like Crippling Cloud, a card like Noxious Fumes. And then we can also talk about our mitigation. Mitigation is like the flip side of damage. It's how well we can survive the enemies attacking us. So our mitigation cards are mostly defends here. We also have Survivor in our deck. I don't really see that because the spreadsheet's in the way, huh? But Silent tends to be a little bit better at blocking at the start of a run than at dealing damage, because Survivor is very good at blocking, and also because Neutralize is in our deck, and Neutralize is a unique damage card which happens to apply Weak, and Weak is another way to block. I shouldn't say block. Weak is another way to mitigate damage. So Right now, our deck, I said, is a 5 out of 10 for single target front loaded, a 2 out of 10 for multi target front loaded, because front loaded damage, front loaded single target damage can be multi target too. You just have to click on the 3 different enemies with your 3 strikes, and eventually you'll end up dealing damage to multiple different things. And then for mitigation, I said we had good single target front loaded mitigation. Basically, we don't have any scaling mitigation. An example of multi-target mitigation could be Piercing Whale or Crippling Cloud, something that AoE reduces incoming damage from enemies, or AoE weakens enemies. An example of single-target scaling mitigation could be Malaise. And then heuristically breaking down our deck is like one part of it, and the second part of it is heuristically breaking down the challenges that our deck has to face so that we understand how this deck matches up with the decisions that we're making, and maybe there's something in particular we have to avoid. Maybe if there's one of the 3 elite fights in the act that we're very bad at, we need to think about buying a potion that would really fix that problem for us, or adding a card that would fix that problem for us. An example would be if we're very bad at beating Book of Stabbing, grabbing a Caltrops, or grabbing a Bronze Scales, or grabbing a Thorns Potion would fix that fight for us, perhaps. Fixer. The idea of adding a fixer to your deck to not necessarily build on the synergies of your deck, but make it so a fight that you're really bad at isn't so bad anymore. And so looking at our expected HP loss against the relevant things in Act 1 right now, the Act 1 easy hallways, the first 3 hallway fights that you get in Act 1, whether they come from a hallway fight node or whether you go to an event and happen to get a hallway fight there, the first 3 are from a different pool from the other ones. And the pool is a lot easier than the ladder pool that you unlock. And in Act 2, the first 2 are from that pool. And in Act 2, again, the first 2 are a lot easier than the other ones. In Act 3, the first 2 are also from a different pool, but in Act 3, I don't really feel that the first hallway fights are that much easier than the other hallway fights. So that's maybe not quite as well balanced, and I don't know. Something that I think about, small thing, I guess. In our Act 1 easy hallway fights, which are the first things that we're going to be fighting, we're doing quite well. In our Act 1 hard hallway fights, we're doing pretty badly. Against Gremlin Knob, Lagavulin Sentries, we're doing quite badly. When the number says 70, it's just like, yeah, we're probably going to die, so I wrote 70. I think that we can probably beat the Sentries. It might be the case that we can beat Guardian if we draw well, I don't know. But obviously our deck is going to get better before we get there, or we're probably going to lose the run. So, as we're looking at card rewards, or as we're going into a store and deciding what to buy and stuff like that, everything comes back to these heuristics and the knowledge surrounding them. I get asked many, many times, is it ever possible to have too many copies of Noxious Fumes? Is there ever a position where this card isn't an auto pick? Is there ever stuff like that, on and on and on? And the answer is always, yeah, of course. The only value that cards or potions or relics have in this game is the ways in which they affect these heuristics that we're looking at, and the other intangibles that are not yet being captured in these heuristics. If I have incredible multi-target scaling damage already, there's very little reason for me to add another Noxious Fumes to my deck. It just isn't going to do anything for me. If I am very, very bad at fighting Gremlin Knob, but very good at fighting Lagavulin and Sentries, and I'm about to go into an Act 1 Elite fight, it may be the case that I am not going to add a card that would be bad against Gremlin Knob, even though it would be great all the rest of the run, because there's a 1 in 3 chance that I fight Gremlin Knob and die. And I want to pick a card that makes it so I can beat Gremlin Knob instead. So that is always going on, and always what you should be thinking about. And you don't have to use my heuristics to make your brain work for this game. These are ones that I've found work very well for me, but if you find that categorizing things differently is able to get you the valuable information into something palatable in a slightly different way, then absolutely go for it. Okay, so the other two things to look at are the map and the whale bonuses. Let's look at the map first. We can look at these in either order. It's not like one way is better than the other, really. This is just what I happen to have open. As I look at this map, each act, there are sort of two things pulling us in different directions. One thing is we want to make our deck stronger. We want our deck to get stronger and stronger and stronger so that it is able to win the run. And we have a very limited number of floors to do that in. We only have 57 floors or something in the run if we're going into Act 4. And so spending floors not making our deck stronger is a pretty unappealing thing to do. For example, going to a bunch of hallway fights late in Act 1. In Act 1, you cannot see upgraded cards from hallway fight rewards. In Act 2, you have a 12.5% chance of each card you see in a hallway fight being upgraded, and in Act 3, a 25% chance. So in Act 2 and 3, things get a lot nicer. But in Act 1, hallway fights give you a little bit of gold, they give you some potions sometimes, and they give you a lot of unupgraded cards, and a lot of those cards are going to be commons. So adding a ton of those rewards to your deck in the second half of Act 1 especially is going to be pretty unappealing. That's an example of something that we might want to be avoiding. The thing that we're being pulled toward to really rapidly improve our deck is, one, elite fights. Elite fights give us relics. So the more elite fights that we can take, the more relics we get, and relics are just incredible in this game. Relics they're like cards that you don't have to draw or pay anything for every fight. You just they do something every turn, and it's great. And the other place that we're getting our deck stronger very rapidly is at a campfire, assuming that we're able to upgrade at a campfire. Card upgrades in this game are similarly great. Every time you draw and play the card, it does something better than before. And some upgrades are particularly high value. Some upgrades are like almost doubling a card's effectiveness, whereas other upgrades are not super great. If we look at our starting deck right now, Neutralize goes from applying 1 week to applying 2 week, and that is actually incredible. That's a very big deal. This doubles the mitigation on the card. A Strike upgrade is relatively low value. It deals an extra 50% damage, which is great, but there is one really big problem, which is that we don't really want to play strikes every time we draw them throughout the run. So upgrading a strike is like if we really need damage to beat Gremlin Knob and there's no other upgrade in our deck that would give us more damage, we may upgrade a strike in this run. Upgrading Neutralize is like, yeah, if I get the Neutralize upgrade, my deck is going to be better in every fight meaningfully for the rest of the run. Very different flavors of upgrade and value there. If we go to a campfire and have to rest, our deck doesn't really get better from that. So Act 1, especially when we don't have sustain relics and things like that, and when the boss fight is not always particularly scary, although Slime Boss is a very scary boss fight for Silent, requires some very specific solutions which can be hard for Silent to find. Act 1's largely about using our health to fight lots of elites and kill the boss without having to rest more than absolutely necessary. And looking at this path, there's really only one path here that stands out to me. I guess I should talk about, in order to get to Act 4, if you don't know anything about Act 4, and obviously there are going to be spoilers about Act 4 in this video, so turn it off if you don't want to know. We have to fight one super elite at some point, so there will be a super elite in each act until we kill one, at which point they stop spawning. This is a super elite. It's one of the 3 possible Act 1 elites with one of 4 different buffs. It either has Metallicize, extra HP, regeneration, or extra strength. We're not very excited to try to fight a super elite without getting a campfire or some other thing that guarantees that our deck gets a lot stronger before we go to a super elite. So we're probably not going to go here. Similarly, we don't really want to take an elite before a campfire. Being able to upgrade a damage card or neutralize before we fight an elite is sort of a massive thing, and it's a very recurring theme for all the classes that starting your Act 1 by hitting a campfire before your first elite fight is a really good idea. So if you want to go this way, we have basically two choices. We can go through five hallway fights, which means we get our 3 easy hallway fights and then take 2 difficult ones into a campfire elite. But then this path is better than this one where we get 2 events and 3 easy hallway fights, because we get another campfire, we get a store after acquiring quite a lot of gold, another campfire, and another elite. And then we can end the act with another hard hallway fight and an event, or if for some reason we want to go to another store, we can take this. This is the path that we would really like to be able to go through, but it's a somewhat unique path because it has 5 hallway fights in a row, so that's going to chip away at our health quite a lot. It's going to mean that we may not be able to use the campfire to rest. We may not be able to use the campfire to upgrade, we may need to rest. And especially in the early hallway fights, we're going to be even more inclined than usual to add commons to our deck, which just make our deck a little bit stronger right now. It's always the case at Ascension 20 that you're looking for commons, especially commons which make you better at dealing damage in your early hallway fights. I'll talk about this more when we get to the card rewards, but basically you're using your health as mitigation a lot in Act 1. You're not worrying about making it so your deck can get through fights without taking damage. You're taking the fact that you have a bunch of health and making sure that your deck can get through fights before something like Gremlin Knob or Lagavulin scales the fight out of your control and just kills you. Okay, so probably we would like to go this way, but it's possible if the whale bonuses take us this way, we might go this way. And it's also possible if we got a whale bonus that made our deck very strong at killing elites, and we wanted to avoid all these hallway fights, we could go this way as well. And this way we lose out on 1 campfire in the act, but we don't have to fight as many early hallway fights, and we actually get 1 more elite out of the act. So taking this path, which fights an elite before our first campfire, I think it is a slightly worse path than the left one, but it's a nice option. Another thing that's drawing me toward the left path here is the fact that we have to beat Slime Boss, and Slime Boss is just a very difficult fight. Slime Boss is a high variance fight. Slime Boss will split once you deal half of his hit points, and then split again once you deal half of the split slime's hit points. And because of that, Slime Boss tests your deck for the ability to deal a bunch of damage all at once on like turn 4. And that's something that no other fight in the entire game ever tests for, pretty much. Maybe Transient in Act 3, but for the most part you don't get tested on that anywhere else. It really requires that you have like some source of scaling AoE damage to deal with a bad split, or like a well-laid plans plus some card that deals a lot of damage, or a potion that deals a lot of damage, or some sort of solution of this nature. So because Slime Boss is so difficult, I'm more inclined to add common cards that make my deck better now, but may get in the way later in the run to increase my chances of surviving Slime Boss. And Slime Boss is the sort of fight where even if our deck is good, we might still die if we draw poorly. So we've got that to look forward to. Let's take a look at the whale bonuses now that we have a better idea of what's going on in the act. We get choose a card to obtain 3 random potions, take 15 damage to obtain 2 random colorless cards, or we can trade our boss relic. So choosing a card to obtain and obtaining 3 random potions are both pretty solid options here. I believe we will be taking the left path, and both of these help our deck get stronger earlier to take on these harder hallway fights and take on this elite. I didn't see anything in here that would make me want to take the right path. Maybe we could go 3 random potions, and if we get good damage potions, we could take the right path, actually. because damage potions will get us through this elite before the campfire. That's worth considering, but I do think that the right path probably ends with us having a weaker deck against Slime Boss than the left path, so I think I still want to go to the left path. This is obviously... When I gave you a representation of the heuristics that I use here, obviously you also have to like gather all the information about Slay the Spire in order to be able to fill these in. And that's something that's very hard to get by anything other than experience. You can Google Slay the Spire reference and get all the information that you really need to know about this game all in a spreadsheet for you. And go ahead and do that and read it and use that as a guide, a learning aid. But realistically, sitting down and reading that is, one, sort of boring, and two, it's not going to give you as good a real understanding as experience, probably. Probably you're going to learn better by just playing lots of runs. So when I'm talking about all this stuff and talking about judgments that I'm making, I'm trying to explain why I'm making those judgments, but I'm making them based on a lot of experience and a lot of understanding of what will happen, which the game's just too complicated for me to, even in a video where I'm going to talk for hours, it's too complicated for me to say every single thing that I'm thinking about, right? One thing, for example, that I'm thinking about is as we go through here, we're going to have to get ready for harder hallway fights. Those are going to test us on AoE damage a little bit more than easier hallway fights or even elite fights will in this act, which means that we're more inclined to take something like Dagger Spray, and Dagger Spray is a good card against Slime Boss. So we have some sort of synergy here between the strategy, which this path is demanding for us to maximize our health and success through this path, and the boss at the end of the act. And putting together more and more and more pieces like that to create a coherent strategy through the act and the run is going to just inch by inch make it so you win slightly more runs over time as you iterate through it again and again and get better and better and better at understanding what's going on. An example of a flip side of that is fighting an elite at the end of an act is silent. Means that you have to be able to beat Gremlin Knob at the end of an act, which might prevent you from adding skills to your deck, because Gremlin Knob punishes you pretty heavily for having too many skills in your deck. And that could actually set you behind as you go into Act 2 with a deck that doesn't have some of the skills which you could have added if you didn't have to fight an elite at the end of the act. Generally, you want to take late act elites anyway, but just like another example that I thought I'd throw out. All right, cool. I thought Panstastic did an excellent job of verbalizing that drawback of Silent Act 1s with late elites. There are so many little things to pick up and learn and implement and adapt to in Slay the Spire. It's why it's a game that can keep me coming back over and over again. So both of these bonuses are fine. Choosing a card to obtain and obtaining 3 random potions, these are sort of similar to getting an extra hallway fight worth of rewards, which that's something that we want right now. We're pretty happy about getting the rewards from these floors. We're going to add some extra damage commons to our deck. We may see a good uncommon. The way that rares are generated in this game is that they start out at a -2% chance to be generated from hallway fights. We won't be seeing those straight away, but every time that you generate a common, the chance goes up by 1% until you generate a rare. So I believe that choosing a card here would count the commons toward our rare chance. So it would like sort of accelerate the speed at which we saw our first rare, which is worth something. Elites have a higher chance of generating rares than hallway fights, and if we saw a rare at the elite fight, that would reset our counter. So most likely what's going to happen is we won't roll a rare in these 5 fights, and then we'll get our first rare at the elite fight. And then 3 random potions are fine. Unfortunately on Ascension 20 we only have 2 potion slots, but we'll get to choose the best 2 potions. Taking 15 damage to obtain 2 random colorless cards. I think this whale bonus was added by the devs as a way to get more colorless cards into your deck a couple of months ago or something like that, and I have never taken it. seems bad, seems just atrocious, like always, no matter what the price really, adding random colorless cards to your deck. The colorless cards aren't very good at Act 1 specifically, and we're in Act 1 at the moment. If we look at the stuff that we care about right now, it's like, how good are we at killing Act 1 hard hallway fights? That's a pretty big deal. How good are we at killing Gremlin Knob? Now, colorless cards aren't good at that. So even though colorless cards can be really sweet later on in runs sometimes, on average, they are very poor at solving problems that we are dealing with right now. So I have like never ever taken colorless cards as a whale bonus. And then trading Starting Relic on Silent. Interestingly, I think that Silent Starting Relic is the best of the late game starter relics. I also think that Silent is the best class to trade Boss Relic on. So, drawing 2 extra cards on turn 1 of combat is incredible later on in the game. When your deck becomes more and more about having specific, very powerful cards and interactions that you want to get to, drawing cards faster and faster to get them into play is a really big deal. Drawing 2 additional cards on turn 1 does a great job of that. Similarly, in Act 2, when you're fighting against enemies who attack you for a lot on turn 1, or in Act 3 hallway fights and things like that, having a better and better turn 1 is excellent. And if we look at our heuristics, having a better turn 1 does a lot of stuff to help your front-loaded mitigation and damage in order to let your scaling mitigation and damage take over. Silent tends to get enough Silent tends to get enough front-loaded stuff to survive, but rely on scaling stuff to win. And the less that you have to warp your deck to fit front-loaded stuff in with cards, the better, because it gets out of the way of your scaling stuff. And by scaling stuff, I mean stuff like Footwork, Noxious Fumes, Corpse Explosion, Catalyst, Dodge and Roll, Malaise. Silent just has many, many very, very strong methods of scaling. If you don't have to add a bunch of cards that do front-loaded things because you have relics that do that for you, that helps a lot to build coherent Silent decks. So the starter relic is actually pretty good later on in the game, I would say. However, it's not quite as good now. Drawing 2 additional cards on turn 1 doesn't do as much when our cards suck. It's not like going to make us play more cards on turn 1 or anything, because we're just going to play 3 of the cards that we draw for the most part. So trading Boss Relic is an option that I take on Silent I'm not sure that I've ever actually traded Boss Relic on Ironclad since the Heart came out. And I think I have a couple of times on Defect, but maybe once on Defect, I don't know. On Silent, it's actually a pretty reasonable thing. The reason that you'd want to trade Boss Relic on Silent would be if you had to prepare for an early immense test, like an early elite fight, or maybe a path with 4 elites and only 1 campfire, and you knew that if you didn't get to do that path, the other paths in the act just weren't very good. They weren't going to improve your deck very well at all. Trading your Boss Relic there to try to high roll and get a Boss Relic that helped you to do that then could make up for missing out on your starter relic later, and could be worth it. And that's generally when I would trade Boss Relic on Silent. So, all that said, I still haven't decided between choosing a card and 3 random potions. I think that these options are very similar in value. I believe what I'm going to want to do generally along this path is to store a potion or 2 for this elite fight and make my deck able to fight these hallway fights without taking a bunch of damage using cards. So I think I'm going to start with a card and then expect to get at least 1 potion from the hallway fights. How potion generation works in this game, I believe, is that it starts at a 30% chance, and every time you miss in a fight, it goes up by 10%. So 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%, 70%. It's pretty unlikely that we don't get at least 1 potion. from these fights to help us with that elite. So let's choose a card that seems reasonable to me. And our options are Well-Laid Plans, Sucker Punch, and Backflip. All right. So let's talk about these cards. Backflip is a very strong card in the second half of most runs, and just not that strong card here. Same problems that we just talked about with the Silent Starter Relic. Drawing more cards isn't letting us do particularly degenerate things at the moment. It's just not an incredible thing to achieve, really. So Backflip is on the back burner for now. That's a card that we'll want to have some copies of later in the run, assuming that we're still alive, but that we're really not interested in right now. In fact, it makes our deck probably worse against Gremlin Knob, which is one of the things that we want to improve at the moment. So definitely not something we're very excited about, something that I would probably prefer to skip than take. Sometimes in my head, I think about cards as like -3 through +3, and skip is a 0. And I'd say Backflip's maybe a -1. Let's do that in general for this run. I think that's a good way of expressing a numerical evaluation of what I'm thinking about a card, on top of the thoughts. Sucker Punch is going to be great for these hallway fights that are coming up, and then it's going to start to suck. There are a few things going on with Sucker Punch here. One is dealing a bit of damage and applying a bit of mitigation is great. You can compare this card sort of to Iron Wave in Ironclad, I think. I think it's a somewhat similar card. Unfortunately, it doesn't deal that much damage. It doesn't actually make our deck that much more capable of killing Lagavulin and Gremlin Knob before they kill us. It just makes us a little bit more able to take 5 less damage on the turn that we play it against those fights. It also becomes very bad later on in runs when we already have access to enough weak to weaken enemies through premium cards like Leg Sweep and Crippling Cloud, and the Neutralize that we will probably be upgrading in this run, and Malaise. Applying weak to something that's already weakened doesn't do anything. And assuming that our deck's going to grow to be a strong deck, we will have better ways to apply weak than Sucker Punch, and we will end up having Sucker Punch just be a worthless card a lot of the time in a lot of our runs. There are going to be runs where you take a Sucker Punch in Act 3 because you've like picked up a Paper Crane, so weak is particularly valuable to you, and you haven't seen one of the premium sources of weak application. Or maybe you've seen one but haven't seen a second yet, so you're still a little bit below par on your weak application. But in most runs, you do see the premium cards at some point, and Sucker Punch just isn't very good later. So I'd call Sucker Punch a +1 right now, because it does help with the early stuff. But Well-Laid Plans is like a +2 or 3. Well-Laid Plans is an incredible enabler of so many things. It is one of the most powerful later in the game cards for Silent. It's one of the most indicative cards, I would say, of an Act 4 win for me. I think unless my deck has Runic Pyramid, which gives me the ability to retain all of my cards every turn, it's much more likely that I won if I did have a Well-Laid Plans than if I didn't have a Well-Laid Plans. Just going all the way to the end of the run. This is a card that's so important to winning the run that I'm willing to take it even if it's not the best in the moment because of how important it is to the late game strategy. Well-Laid Plans is also, like, it's pretty good right now. At the end of your turn, retain up to 1 card. So already for elite fights, we can use that to retain Neutralize, to use it on a turn where we're being attacked for a lot. Against the sentries, we can use it in the latter half of the fight to hold on to defends for when we need more of them to defend ourselves against incoming attacks. It probably improves our damage taken against sentries by like 10, improves our damage taken against Lagavulin by 5 or 10, improves our damage taken against Gremlin Knob by like, it's probably about break even because we have to draw it and it doesn't deal damage. And then it improves our damage taken in hallway fights significantly as well. So I'm going to take Well-Laid Plans here. I think it's a pretty easy pick, but I wanted to explain why. And thinking about heuristics and how it fits into these, it doesn't very much. My heuristics are sort of bad for capturing what well-laid plans does. I'm gonna actually let's call this consistency. And so consistency means like card draw and card manipulation. And something that well-laid plans does is give us like an 8 out of 10 on card manipulation right from the start of the run, and that will basically stay forever. We can play our cards on the right turns now because we're able to hold on to them when we draw them on the wrong turn in order to play them on the right turn. And suddenly a card like Piercing Whale, which is very good against multi-attacks, goes massively up in value because we can hold it until the multi-attack turn. Okay, cool. So we were going to go this way. We played 30 minutes of the game before we got into the first fight. I'm probably not going to go into as much detail on the fights as I am on the other stuff. If there are interesting decisions, I'll talk about a little bit more. But in general, we're using well-laid plans here to navigate through this bird cultist fight. I've played this cultist fight so many times at this point. I'm not sure how many interesting things there are to say about it. I would guess, for what it's worth, that well-laid plans saved us somewhere between 2 to 4 health in that fight, for what it's worth. Like, already well-laid plans was quite good in that fight. And in the fight, we picked up 16 gold. It's actually important that you get gold from fights. Sometimes people ask me, like, do you like fights or events more for rewards? And the fact that we get a bit of gold from every fight, like, that adds up to buying a relic later. That's a big deal. If you can fight fights, they generally do give you better rewards than events do. The problem is that fights take your health away. So you may want to avoid them because they're going to kill you eventually. We also got an attack potion, so we're rolling super high on everything right now. Attack potion is excellent for killing elites because dealing damage against Act 1 elites is how you kill them. And we get another card reward. And this one I think is really interesting. Dodge and Roll is a premium block card for Silent, a premium mitigation card. Silent has 3 late game main strategies for mitigation. One is using malaise to just make it so enemies don't attack you very much. Most enemies later on in the game are reliant on multi-attacks. The big place where malaise isn't great is Donu Deka, but like against the Heart, against Time Eater, against Awakened One, against a lot of this stuff in Act 3, malaise is really good. Another way is becoming invincible using intangible, so Wraith Form, Apparitions, Ghost in the Jars. You can play decks which get all of their mitigation that way and don't even need to play block cards, really. And then the third way, and the way that is most accessible just through commons and uncommons, so it's the way that you end up approaching most runs, is to use a combination of dexterity gain and cards which make block for little energy. And Dodge and Roll stands out amongst those cards because it makes block twice. So if I play a Footwork to gain 2 dexterity, all of a sudden Dodge and Roll is making 4 more block instead of making 2 more block. And that's a pretty big deal. Dodge and Roll doesn't help right now very much. It doesn't help us beat Gremlin Knob. It's not that great against Slime Boss. It's not that great against Lagavulin because Lagavulin will debuff our dexterity about halfway through the fight, and all of a sudden, instead of making more block twice, we'll be making less block twice because our dexterity got debuffed. Dodge and Roll right now, I would say, is about a 0 for me, maybe a minus 0.5, just because of it being a liability against those elite fights that we have to build for. Would be beneficial for the hallway fights, for what it's worth. But bigger picture, we need to get good at this elite fight coming up, and Dodge and Roll's not going to do a very good job of that. Infinite Blades is a somewhat weak source of scaling single target damage. When you play Infinite Blades for every turn for the rest of the fight after this one, you're going to get to play a Shiv and attack something. Infinite Blades, when it's good, and it is good quite often, it's usually good because it's synergizing with something else. Silent has a lot of cards which care about playing many cards per turn, stuff like Afterimage or 1,000 Cuts. Silent has a lot of cards which care about attacking a lot of times a turn, things like Finisher or Envenom. And Silent also has a lot of relics, which care about the things that Infinite Blades does. Even something like Vajra, which just adds 1 strength, will make Infinite Blades deal 1 more damage every turn. But the big ones are like Kunai, Shuriken, Ornamental Fan, which give you very important procs if you play 3 attacks in a turn. Infinite Blades makes it much more doable to play 3 attacks in a turn. And like stuff like Dead Branch, actually. Dead Branch is an immensely powerful rare relic, which really enjoys you having an Infinite Blades so that you can exhaust an extra card every turn to generate more free cards and more value. So Infinite Blades right now would probably be okay for hallway fights. It's very slow. We're in a situation in the run where we don't care much about scaling damage except like against Lagavulin. And Lagavulin, Infinite Blades isn't very good against Lagavulin for the same reason that Dodge and Roll isn't. When Strength gets debuffed, like that's gonna hit Infinite Blades over and over again. Yeah, against Lagavulin is probably... And Sentries. Infinite Blades would be good against Sentries, sure. But in Act 1, we're largely trying to get through things with front-loaded damage still. We're going to start to switch over to scaling damage once front-loaded damage is less of a successful strategy, because right now we want to use front-loaded damage while it's strong in order to get more relics and get through hallway fights and stuff like that. And Skewer does a decent job of dealing front-loaded damage. Skewer is I'd say like plus 0.5 for Infinite Blades for what it's worth. And I also want to say that having an integer scale and then using decimals in it is cheating, and I apologize for that. But that's what I'm going to do. Skewer deals extra front-loaded damage. Skewer is really cool because it lets us have a deck with fewer attacks in it, but still we are going to be able to put all of our energy into attacks on turns where it matters. And Skewer is very good with well-laid plans, and it's very good with well-laid plans and Slime Boss. You'll remember I said Slime Boss tests you for the ability to burst damage on like turn 3 or 4. Well, that happens to be something that Skewer plus well-laid plans is really good at. It's actually one of the best combinations of cards in the game for doing that. So I'm going to take a Skewer. I don't think Skewer is incredible here. Skewer is a card that gets better and better as it picks up synergies. 7 damage per energy isn't actually a very good rate, and upgraded for 10 damage per energy is also not that good a rate. You can deal more damage per energy with other cards. But it lets you put all of your energy into attacks when you want to, which is very good against Gremlin Knob and Lagavulin. And Slime Boss, and it hits many of the same synergies that Infinite Blades does, like Strength gain's really good, and all the stuff that cares about playing multiple attacks in a turn. You can play Skewer for 0 on a turn where you don't actually want to invest much in attacks, and it counts as another card played and another attack played, and so it can get good in that direction as well. And then there are some really strong interactions like Pen Nib, which we could get into as well, and then maybe we'll end up there. I don't know. I'm liking the deck so far. I've added a Skewer, I've added a well-laid plans. It's looking pretty good. This is the first turn of the run where I've had a decision, I think. I think it ends up not being that interesting of a decision, though. We're just gonna take 2 damage. And otherwise the stuff is all good. I'm not going to focus super hard on like playing every fight perfectly or anything. You may even notice me make some mistakes. I'm trying really hard to talk about the grander strategy of the game. And that's very much my focus here. So I apologize if I play some fights messy, but I think so far everything's been good. So we got a fear potion, which means we've rolled another 30%. Super nice. And we've got an accuracy, acrobatics, and dagger spray on offer. Let's take a second and anchor ourselves in what our deck is doing again. We've added a skewer, which lets us output all of our energy for the turn into damage. It means that we're less interested in adding like more common attacks, which are okay at that because skewer is so good at it already. We've added a well-laid plans, which makes it so we can deploy a card on the right turn for it. We don't have any cards upgraded, and this is something that's useful to think about. The more campfires you have, like upgraded commons that you add to your deck are pretty okay. Unupgraded commons can really start to drag your deck down in Act 2 and 3. So adding lots of unupgraded commons to your deck is not something that you're super excited to do in Act 1. However, we still have 2 difficult hallway fights. These are fights which are largely about AoE a lot of the time. So we do want to probably get some sort of AoE into the deck, and that's something that Dagger Spray does. And Dagger Spray is good against Slime Boss too, and it's good with well-laid plans against Slime Boss. So, these cards, I'd say Dagger Spray is probably like a plus 1.5. It's not a card that we're going to be super excited about later in the game. It's sort of nice that it scales with the same things that Skewer scales with, like it gets better with Strength and Skewer gets better with Strength. It gets better with Envenom and Skewer gets better with Envenom, stuff like that. But it's a card that we can be pretty happy about. Accuracy is like a pretty weak source of scaling single target damage. It makes it so that if you're playing a ton of shivs, your shivs are stronger, but when I was talking about Infinite Blades, I talked about a lot of ways that playing shivs with Infinite Blades could become strong, and I didn't have to mention accuracy. There are lots of ways that playing shivs can become strong without needing accuracy, and that's generally what happens with accuracy, is that it gets left on the sidelines because other things which synergize with playing a lot of shivs, in maybe a less in-your-face way, they might not actually literally say shivs deal 3 additional damage, but they do make it so shivs are better. Other ways are usually better than accuracy is. Acrobatics suffers from the same things that like Backflip does. Drawing the extra cards right now isn't that important, especially spending 1 energy to do something that is only drawing and discarding a card just doesn't help us that much at this point in the run. Acrobatics is another card that I may add 1 or 2 copies of to my deck later on in a run to increase my ability to quickly get through my deck to deploy my important cards, but for now, just doesn't matter. I'd give it like a minus 1.5. It actively makes our deck worse against Gremlin Knob. Probably improves our deck a little bit against Sentries, probably makes our deck worse in hallway fights, actually. Ooh. We get the first interesting potion decision of the game here, because we can choose to use a potion in this fight. We're now at a 30% chance of seeing a new potion at the end of the fight. I think that with well-laid plans in our deck, we don't expect to take much damage against Jawworm, though. We also have a really interesting decision of whether to defend 3 times. Basically spend 1 energy to save 2 health or not here. We can spend our 3rd energy. We're gonna play 2 defense, that's for sure. Usually in the early fights, you are happy to spend 1 energy to save 5 health in almost every single one of the early fights, always, pretty much. Sometimes that's not true, but as a general rule, that's usually your starting point. We have to decide if we want 2 health or 8 damage now, though. And Jawworm can scale up. He can get scarier as the fight goes on. Move myself as far to the right as possible so you can see as many cards as possible as this goes on. This is something that I would be really interested to see a computer simulation of, honestly, because this is largely just probability as the fight goes on. But my suspicion is that still have Neutralize and Survivor. Jawworm doesn't attack sometimes, and we have a Skewer and a well-laid plans. My suspicion is that we can actually do better by defending than by dealing 8 damage with attacks here. And also, I don't think that playing one of these potions is very useful. I think that having the potions available, though, is useful for later. Is useful for taking the line that makes the fight longer, because it gives us a bailout if Jolram, like, buffs strength a bunch and we don't do a good job of attacking him. I actually look up Jolram's AI right now. Alright, Slay the Spire reference. Let me get this on screen for you. Because we need to know what he's doing next turn. All monsters, non-boss, Jawworm, hard version. Has a 40, 30, 25 split between Bellow, Thrash, and Chomp. Cannot use Thrash 3 times in a row or Chomp or Bellow twice in a row. And the attack that he's using right now is Thrash, dealing 7 damage and blocking for 5. So he cannot Thrash next turn. It's going to be a 45-25 split between Bellow or Chomp. So we may be taking 12 incoming damage next turn. And it's a 25 out of 70 that would happen. And our deck has a defend. So if we hold onto this defend and discard Ascender's Bane, we don't get to exhaust Ascender's Bane. We'll draw it again next cycle through the deck. But when he does the bigger attack, we have enough defense with this defend in our hand. So I think I am discarding that and holding onto this defend. And he did do the larger attack, so we can go neutralize, defend, defend. Perfect. This is a Bellow. Again, going back to... That's what this is called, right? Bellow. Going back to the idea of well-laid plans and Skewer and the fact that Jawworm doesn't attack every turn, the fact that we have Skewer means that on this turn, we get to deal a bunch of damage. Jawworm will be on 11, and we have 14, 20 incoming damage next turn. So going back to our reference spreadsheet, how much does Jawworm block for? What is the purple? What does the purple mean? 9 block means that we actually have exactly lethal on Jawworm next turn. Okay. I would definitely have taken like a few more points of damage against Jawworm there had I been playing the fight on stream, because I would not have put in the extra time to think about how exactly all the turns played out. But we managed to win that fight without taking any damage or using a potion, and that's pretty incredible. Cool. You can... This is a third for a fight, and I, for the reference, have over 2,000 hours in this game. There is so much depth to Slay the Spire, and so much stuff you can learn and improve on. Sneaky Strike, Endless Agony, and Acrobatics. Acrobatics hasn't changed since our last evaluation of it. We don't have to talk about that again. A Sneaky Strike is a card that largely shows up in Silent in decks with Snekawai. And it is a card that helps a deck with Snekawai to get enough value to beat Act 3 bosses, but it doesn't do a very good job of helping a deck with Snekawai beat Act 4 bosses. It's generally... If you have a deck which is discarding cards every turn, Sneaky Strike is still not a very good payoff. Sneaky Strike will deal 10 damage for 0 energy net, and... I mean, that's not really much better than what Endless Agony does without you having had to discard the card. So Endless Agony is an alright card. A lot of people ask me questions with Endless Agony about like, do you hold on to Endless Agony to play it again the next time through your deck? And the answer is usually no. Usually what this card does is deal 8 damage for 0 energy, which is pretty good early on in the run. And the other thing it does is it plays 2 cards for you and 2 attacks for you. So all that stuff like Kunai and Shuriken and Ornamental Fan and Dead Branch for what it's worth and all that. Envenom, After Image, Thousand Cuts. All of this procs twice off of Endless Agony. It is basically another common attack that would be adding to the deck. And we don't have a strike remove yet. We will probably be able to remove a couple of strikes later. In general, this deck is starting to feel pretty heavily weighted toward attacks, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that. We've got a few too many of them. We are about to take some hard Act 1 hallway fights, though. And then some elite fights, and then fight Slime Boss. So I think I could see skipping or taking Endless Agony here. There's a thing in Magic the Gathering. This is a really weird tangent to go on, but it's the best way I can think of to explain this. There's a thing in Magic the Gathering where when a constructed format comes out, the first thing that people learn usually is how to build the strong aggro decks. And so at the start of a constructed format in Magic the Gathering, and probably for other deck builders too, the aggro decks tend to be king. But then people work out how to build control decks to beat those aggro decks, and formats can degenerate into people getting riskier and riskier with their control decks to be able to keep beating the aggro decks that they're facing while getting better and better at beating the other control decks that people are building. And sometimes you can walk into a format at the end of the format and actually the aggro decks are back around to being the best picks again because the control decks have just gotten so dirtly. So Endless Agony, adding it to the deck is sort of like being better at killing aggro decks and matters more at the start of the format, which in this case would be Act 1. It's very good at like the hard hallway fights that we're doing right now. If we think that we really understand Slay the Spire very well and really want to increase our chance of winning the run and that we're really good at managing our deck to beat the fights right now, we can get away from picking Endless Agony. We can think really hard about enemy AI and potion usage and stuff like that. Get through this part of the run without Endless Agony in our deck, and then we'll have a deck that's better set up to deal with the rest of the run. So I could go either way on Endless Agony. I think the better you are at the game, basically, the worse that Endless Agony gets here, because you can use your potions here and playing cards in the right order as a stopgap to get you through this part of the run and not have to have Endless Agony in your deck later on in the run, which will be better for us. There are also... Endless Agony is very bad with Snecko-Eye. Endless Agony can be quite bad if we get a Bag of Preparation or a Ninja Scroll. It can actually make it so we're drawing too many cards in our starting hand. There are some places where Endless Agony really has a lot of drawbacks, and it happens to be pretty bad against the Heart at the end of the run, because the Heart deals damage to you every time you play a card, and this plays 2 cards for very little impact. So I'm going to go with the skip on Endless Agony. It's a little bit aggressive, I would say, but that's what we're going to do. Slime Gang. I think this is like a 1 out of 16 or something. But there's this and the Gremlin Gang, so it ends up being a 2 out of 16 effectively to get a really bad fight from your Act 1 hard fights. Which enemy you fought prior to this fight actually affects which hard fights you can get. If you fought a slime in your last easy Act 1 hallway fight, you can't get the Slime Gang for your first hard hallway fight. There's some interesting things in the AI for stuff like that. We don't have a Piercing Wail. It would be really nice to have a Piercing Wail right now. There's a decent chance we can deal 6 AoE damage to everything next turn. I think with a 40% chance to get a potion from this fight and 2 potions in our belt already, we're going to take enough damage from this fight for it to be worth using a potion here. And Dagger Spray is like the dream. So it's Dagger Spray, and that simplifies the fight a lot for us. We don't have to think quite as hard about what's going on anymore. Let's go strike here. I just use Neutralize to kill this one this turn. We'll play Survivor to block all the incoming damage after we kill that. And that should be a damageless fight. So, good potion usage. Unfortunately, we didn't get a new one. So we're missing a potion now. And we have another super interesting card pick. You remember when I was talking about dodge and roll a couple of years ago at the start of this video that I said that one of Silent's most reliable ways to turn into a deck that could mitigate was using Footworks. Footworks plus cards which cost low energy and have block written on them, basically. And here's our Footwork. There isn't really a card that does what Footwork does for Silent. There are other ways to achieve mitigation, but in the package of synergies which Footwork is good in, you gotta have Footworks. You can have like no dodge and rolls. You could have backflips and cloak and daggers and it would work okay. Or you could have only dodge and rolls and no backflips and it would sort of work okay. You wouldn't draw many cards, but you could maybe have an acrobatics. But if you don't have any Footworks, you're gonna struggle. So Footwork is an excellent pickup for thinking about how our deck is going to work later on in the run. It's also an okay pickup for the elite fights. It's only bad against Gremlin Knob, but it is good against sentries and it's good against Lagavulin. So Footwork's like a +2 here, and the only question is whether Poison Stab is better. Blade Dance is not better. Blade Dance is an okay-ish damage card. A lot of the times when I've been adding damage cards to the deck, I've been talking about how they make the deck better against Gremlin Knob, and Blade Dance is a skill, so it doesn't make the deck better against Gremlin Knob, just for what it's worth. It's a lot better. It's a lot worse than Endless Agony. Endless Agony is basically Blade Dance, but it costs 0 energy. So Blade Dance is like probably a -1 right now, especially when we have already damage cards in our deck. It's probably more like a -2, actually. But Poison Stab is actually quite a good card. Silence poison damage gives scaling single target damage, and the heart is a single target with 800 health. So it does not take too much thinking to work out that scaling single target damage against the heart is probably pretty good, and that poison is an immensely available way to get that damage against the heart. Poison Stab is also just, it's a very good card against like Lagavulin and Gremlin Knob and stuff. It just deals a lot of damage for 1 energy, and 9 damage on the first turn, plus 2 and 1 on the next turns is 12 damage for 1 energy. That's the most damage that we've seen in terms of a single target damage card for 1 energy so far this run. So Poison Stab is pretty good. I think with Skewer and a Vulnerable Pot still, we don't need it for the elite fights, and I think Footwork is better. But I'd give Poison Stab like a +1, maybe a +1.5 here, and we're taking Footwork because Footwork is slightly better than that. Alright, so we've gotten both of the worst Act 1 hallway fights possible. And this one's particularly bad because it has a 17 health Fat Gremlin and a Gremlin Wizard. We're going to have to use another potion here. I don't think there's any avoiding that. Which means that we're going to be going into our elite fight without the vulnerable potion. But the potion does more here than it will do in the elite fight. Being able to kill Fat Gremlin on turn 1. On Ascension 20, Fat Gremlin's going to frail and weaken us for next turn. And that isn't good. So this has to happen. This has to happen. And then we have to draw enough damage to kill Gremlin Wizard before we explode. On the other hand, we're not taking that much incoming damage right now. And next turn, Gremlin Wizard won't do anything again, and we'll just get attacked for 5 again. So I think it's fine to play our well-laid plans, play a defend, and hold on to footwork. We don't have to hold on to the defend, I don't think. And we got lucky. We got actually lucky in 2 ways there. Shield Gremlin shielding Mad Gremlin instead of Gremlin Wizard means, 1, we can deal damage to Gremlin Wizard, and we have to kill Gremlin Wizard, or Gremlin Wizard kills us. And it means 2, if we drew Dagger Spray this turn, Mad Gremlin has a thing where upon receiving attack damage, he gains 2 strength. Dagger Spray is not something that we want to be playing when Gremlin Wizard has 11 block and Mad Gremlin doesn't have any, because it will make Mad Gremlin a lot madder. But when it has block, it's not as big a deal. We know exactly what we're drawing next turn. Dagger Spray Strike. Shield Gremlin is going to... This is still complicated. Shield Gremlin may shield Gremlin Wizard for 11, which means 4 health, 15 health, 8, 14. I think what we do is... If Shield Gremlin shields Gremlin Wizard, we're going to end up having to Dagger Spray and take 9 from Mad Gremlin. Unfortunately. I don't see any way around that. So that's just what's going to happen, I guess. Wait, if you're at 1, we could just strike. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go Skewer Neutralize. Hold on to Strike so that we can strike. There we go. I found it. This is the first damage we're taking this run. We've taken 5. That's 30. That's scary. Strike, defend, and from here we're good. From here it's just playing cards. There's not really any thinking anymore. Well-laid plans means that there's no possible way for us to draw poorly enough to take damage here as long as we're playing reasonably. Always, you can mouse over things and see what the hotkey is for them in this game. Valuable pointer. Always be checking what's in your draw pile so you understand what's getting drawn next. There are only 4 cards in my draw pile, so I know that next turn I have these 4 cards plus whatever card gets shuffled into my draw pile. It's a very valuable thing to know. It means that Dagger Spray plus Strike is ending the fight for us. Ooh, a Smoke Bomb. That's really interesting. I lied to you a bit when I showed you the way that I think about damage taken from fights. This shouldn't be a surprise. I said that I oversimplified it, right? I said that, like, I thought about Gremlin Knob and I thought I took 70 damage from him, and at this point probably we're down to like 32 for what it's worth, which is still really bad, but it's better. I think against Lagavulin we probably take like 30. Against Sentries we probably take like 20. I'm sure we're getting to a point where we're beating Guardian Slime Boss and Hexaghost, but I'm not going to bother updating that. We never have to worry about Act 1 Heezy hallway fights again, and we probably almost never take damage in them. Against Act 1 hard hallways, we have been taking like 5 damage against the hardest ones in the game, which is pretty nice. I think we probably average like 6. But anyway, I lied to you. This number isn't very good. And Smoke Bomb gives an excellent reason to talk about why the number's not very good. You don't want to think about a number for how much damage you take in these things. You want to think about a distribution. So instead of thinking about like the number 5, you want to think about the distribution of damage that centers on 5. There's a paint window. So Sorry, this is obviously drawing a graph in paint. If like here's 5, 10, 15. Most of the time we're gonna take 5 damage in a fight, but sometimes we'll take 0. And sometimes we'll take more. And against Gremlin Knob, like on average we take like 30, which is over here. But Gremlin Knob's a lot about whether we kill by turn 4 or not. And if we don't kill by turn 4, we'll take more. And if we do, we'll take less. So Gremlin Knob actually looks something like that. It's very incomplete to say that we take like 30 damage against Gremlin Knob, because actually most of the time we don't. Most of the time we either take less or more. Smoke Bomb's really good in situations... Oh, I just realized that this is like completely off the window. Whatever. Smoke Bomb's really good in situations like this, where we can see early on if it's likely we'll take more or less in a fight based on what we draw early. If we draw our damage cards in a favorable way, we may be taking less damage in the fight, and if we don't, we may be taking more. And so we can identify and use Smoke Bomb for this area, which is good because that area sucks, and we can hold on to Smoke Bomb for this area. Just something sort of interesting about Smoke Bomb value that I wanted to point out. And I wanted to add that to how I was thinking about fights now that you've had 5 floors or 6 hours, I guess, probably, to think about how I'm thinking about that stuff. Still no rare, interestingly. So we'll probably get our first rare against the elite fight. There was a chance it would get it before, but looks like probably the elite fight's where it happens. Outmaneuver, Prepared, and Sneaky Strike. One of the first tricky things about the game that a lot of people learn is that Prepared doesn't actually draw you deeper in your deck, because if you just didn't put Prepared in your deck, you wouldn't have drawn it. So when it says draw 1 card, you would have just drawn that card already if Prepared wasn't in your deck. So basically what Prepared does is make you discard a card. It also forces you to play a skill, which is bad against Gremlin Knob. Gives Gremlin Knob more strength. Prepared is a pretty terrible card. There are very few decks which want an unupgraded Prepared. Upgraded Prepared is more exciting, but Prepared is like only ever going to be in your deck if it has some very good reasons to want to discard cards and doesn't have like an acrobatics or a better way to discard cards. Talked about Sneaky Strike already. Outmaneuver struggles a bit to be relevant. So the idea of generating a bunch of energy next turn is cool with Skewer, for example. And actually, it would be really cool with Skewer against Slime Boss with well-laid plans, for what it's worth. We probably have one of the best situations in the game to care about this in Act 1, with all the stuff that we have. The problem is that it's so clunky, so difficult to organize, and just playing Skewer is already good enough. Like, the biggest things you can do with this are like play a bigger Skewer or play a huge Malaise, and it's like you can just play Skewer or Malaise for how much energy you have already in a turn, and that's generally good enough. So Outmaneuver tends not to achieve very much, and that's basically my opinion about Outmaneuver. You can have decks where it looks like Outmaneuver is doing a very, very large amount of things, but usually what's actually happening is that Outmaneuver is making your deck less consistent and making it look flashier without making it win more often. You'd probably be winning more if you just didn't have the Outmaneuvered in it, and your deck did the same thing every turn instead of less one turn and more the next turn. So these are all skips for me. It's like -1, -3, -3, probably, something like that. Not a very good card reward. And we have a really interesting Campfire decision. So we're going to Smith here. We're absolutely not resting on 52 HP. We did a good job of holding onto our health through those hallway fights. And our best Smiths right now are different depending on what we want. Actually, in a in a pretty incredible way. We've got a very good smith for single target front-loaded damage and skewer, a very good smith for multi-target front-loaded damage in dagger spray, a very good smith for card manipulation in well-laid plans, a very good smith for front-loaded mitigation in neutralize, and a very good smith for scaling mitigation in footwork. All 5 of these upgrades are good upgrades. So a lot of the time people ask me, like, how good is upgrading this card and stuff like that? And coming back to our heuristics, this is not really a question about which upgrade is better than the other, like which upgrade is more powerful. It's a question about what our deck needs to do next. Does our deck need to do more front-loaded damage next, or does it need to mitigate better next? Does it need to manipulate cards better next? And the answer to that is 1, we have to be better at beating Gremlin Knob, because Gremlin Knob and Lagavulin are our worst elite fights right now, and we just want to be better at killing them. So front-loaded damage is a really big deal. We also need to be better at killing Slime Boss, and Slime Boss is about front-loading single target and then front-loading AoE damage later. Or ideally you'd scale damage against Slime Boss, but we're probably going to have to get through it with front-loaded damage because it's hard to find scaling damage. You need to find premium uncommons, and that just doesn't happen that often. Or good relics or something like that. So that just points me to Skewer. And it's no longer a question about which upgrade is abstractly best or anything. It's simply a matter of looking at what's happening in the run and identifying what you need to do. And what you need to do is be better at doing what Skewer does. So you upgrade Skewer. I think the other possibility here is Neutralize. But the reason that I'm going to take Skewer over Neutralize is, even though Neutralize is about as good, maybe even better against Lagavulin and Gremlin Knob, Neutralize is like a little bit worse against Sentries, and Neutralize is much worse against Slime Boss than Skewer is. So if we go through this act, there's a decent chance that we don't get 3 upgrades. There's a decent chance we have to rest at one of these 2 campfires, I would say. And if we're only getting 2 upgrades, if we're having to rest at this campfire for that Elite 2, I would really like them to be Skewer and Dagger Spray for Slime Boss. And so even though Neutralize is like a decent upgrade for right now, we're going to go Skewer. Got Lagavulin. Alright, and we get to deploy well-laid plans and footwork straight away. Lagavulin's a pretty interesting fight. You get 3 turns to set up, or you can break Lagavulin's Metallicize at any point to just start fighting straight away. The fact that we got footwork into play early is super great, and now we have to make decisions about how much we want to block in this fight. Because Lagavulin debuffs us, and we don't have that much damage in the deck. Probably don't want to block that much in this fight. Neutralize seems like a really good card. Playing Skewer a lot seems like a good thing. We might actually die in this fight. Our deck's not very good at this. I might have overestimated how good we were. I'm not going to Smoke Bomb. Again, going back all the way to the start, Act 1's about using our health to get our deck stronger, and getting relics and rare cards is really good, and we expect to get a rare card from this. I think what I am going to do, though, is give up 3 damage from Neutralize now. Like, we could start with Skewer, Neutralize, and hold Survivor, and that would be pretty cool. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to hold Skewer for next turn. That'll be our 3rd turn, our last turn before we can wake Lagavulin up. I'm going to play Skewer, hold Dagger Spray on that turn. And that way we reshuffle the deck straight away, and we get Skewer back earlier. Also, this is a really good time to point something out about Slay the Spire, which is, it's sort of subtle and sort of important. We have 17 cards in our deck, and we draw 7 cards on the first turn, then 5 on the next, and 5 on the next, which means that we perfectly reshuffle our discard pile into our draw pile. We have exactly 0 cards in our draw pile right now. That means that there's no card in our draw pile that doesn't get reshuffled into our draw pile again for the second time through the deck, which means that 17 cards for Silent or 15 for Ironclad and Defect is going to be much more consistent in this fight than different numbers. let's say that I'm really reliant on this skewer, but it's the 18th card of the deck. It's an 18 card deck, and skewer is the next card right now. There's a decent chance that I lose the fight from that, because not only do I not draw skewer until the 4th turn, but also it doesn't go in my draw pile the second time round at all. So I don't draw it the second time for an extra 3 turns or something. And that's actually a pretty big deal. There's a very subtle inflection point, but aiming to, well, it's probably something more to recognize that it's happening than to craft decisions based on it a lot. But it is happening, and it's worth pointing out, I think. So, let's skewer. We're going to have to tank some hits, unfortunately, because we just don't deal enough damage to win before we die otherwise. I think that playing Survivor is a good idea. Because 10 block for 1 energy seems very good. And I'm going to hold on to Skewer so that I can put 3 energy into it next turn. Neutralize getting drawn there is excellent. We're going to draw Skewer again sometime soon, hopefully. And hopefully we just win before we get attacked again. That would be nice. If we draw Neutralize Skewer, we will not quite have enough. So I think what we end up doing, because we can't win in 1 turn, we just barely don't have enough damage. Probably what we end up doing is blocking as much as possible. And then, yeah, I think we actually discard Skewer here. Blocking as much as possible and then killing on the next turn that Lagavulin debuffs us. 4/4. Skewer will be dealing 18, 21, 17. That should be fine. So let's hold on to Survivor. Hold on to Dagger Spray instead of Strike, even though they both deal 4. This doesn't actually matter, but maybe it's worth pointing out. Doesn't actually matter. Dagger Spray will be worse later, and holding on to it makes it possible for us to shuffle our draw pile without Dagger Spray in it. Probably doesn't matter, but I felt like that was worth pointing out for some reason. Alright, we got a Bag of Preparation. Very good relic for later on. Maybe not that incredible right now, but it's really nice to have 9 card starting hand, so that's cool. We're up to 207 gold. We've had a very challenging path through Act 1 so far. And our options are Predator, Riddle with Holes, and Dagger Spray. We still don't have a rare card. Wow. These cards are sort of bad. The card draw from Predator is not very strong early and is much worse now that we've fought Lagavulin already. Lagavulin's a place where dealing a lot of damage with 1 card is better than dealing a little bit of damage with lots of different cards. And also have a Bag of Preparation. Like, the card draw just isn't that good on Predator right now. Riddle with Holes is atrocious unless we have a lot of reasons to care about dealing damage multiple times. And Dagger Spray, we already have a Dagger Spray. So this is bad. This is a bad card reward. I would say, like, Predator is about neutral for me. Nice that it combos with Necronomicon and Snecko Eye and stuff like that, so it wouldn't be the worst pickup. But it's probably not a very good one. Riddle with Holes, I'd say, is like a -1. Dagger Spray is right on the edge for me too. Dagger Spray is a very good card against Slime Boss. I think we are making a decision largely about how likely we are to die to Slime Boss if we skip here. Because these cards start to get in the way of our deck for later on in the run, and aren't very good for later on in the run. Predator is actually probably the best one of them for later on in the run, but Dagger Spray in particular seems really good against Slime Boss. Having 2 Dagger Sprays and a Skewer Plus and a Well-Laid Plan seems like it would enable us to win that fight a decent amount of the time. I think Dagger Spray is just barely going to edge out Skip for me. It's a good card against sentries as well, and we want to get better at killing sentries. I think that was really close. Alright, so we probably want to rest once before this elite fight. It's possible that we'll just upgrade twice, though. We do have a smoke bomb against Gremlin Knob if that fight's going poorly. I would rather rest here and get a relic from Gremlin Knob than upgrade here and use smoke bomb on Gremlin Knob, though. I'd rather win that fight and get the rewards. But there's no reason to rest here instead of there, right? Like, we may pick up a Dreamcatcher or something in this chest, which makes resting better. And also we might like get a good relic here plus a good potion there and no longer have to rest against Gremlin Knob, in which case we can just upgrade here as well. So we definitely want to upgrade now. And for all the reasons that I talked about before, they're all still there. We're going to upgrade Dagger Spray against Slime Boss and hope that wins us that fight. Let's open a chest. Little known thing is that the size of the chest actually affects how rare the relic in it is. So this chest is more likely to have a common relic than a larger chest would be more likely to have an uncommon or rare relic. Juzu bracelet. In Slay the Spire, now that Act 4 is out, you need to collect 3 keys to beat the heart, and one of the keys gets acquired by skipping a relic from a chest. You pick up the key instead of the relic. And Juzu Bracelet it's a really weird relic, because like I've said before, if you can win fights, you'd actually rather have fights than question marks most of the time. So if your deck's strong at winning fights, like Juzu Bracelet actually sort of makes your pathing worse. Now, there aren't that many decks which are good at winning Act 2 hallway fights, but our deck is really close to being one of them. Our deck has 2 copies of Dagger Spray in it, which are quite good in Act 2 hallway fights. It has a 9-card starting hand, which is really good at fighting hallway fights. Hallway fights are largely about like the first few turns most of the time. It has a well-laid plans, it has a skewer plus. I think Juzu Bracelet has very little value for us. It's even possible that picking up Juzu Bracelet is actively bad here. So I'm just going to take the Sapphire key and get that out of the way. Generally speaking, I'll take the keys as late as possible in a run because the key definitely does nothing until the end of Act 3, right? Like, it's not like we're going to fight Gremlin Knob and be like, hey, we got a Sapphire key. Woo, look at how strong we are. No, it doesn't do anything in the Gremlin Knob fight. But Juzu Bracelet just seems like it's sort of bad here. It's, at best, it's mediocre. Let's say it like that. This is a good store. Good store. So I've been talking a lot about how against Slime Boss, scaling AoE damage is like the absolute dream, and that's what Noxious Fumes does. Noxious Fumes is scaling AoE damage. Noxious Fumes is scaling single target damage too. It's pretty good against the heart. It procs a lot against artifact charges. Noxious Fumes is a great card to have one of in your deck for Act 4, and generally a pretty good card in late game silent decks. It's not an incredible card. It's not the only card you can have in your deck to deal damage. At lower Ascensions, I think when people get introduced to Silent, a lot of the time they like find very simple patterns to play that succeed, and Noxious Fumes plus block cards is one that succeeds at low difficulties. But at higher Ascensions, you do have to have a deck that's a little bit more creative than that usually. You do have to have some ways to deal front-loaded damage, and Noxious Fumes is a very slow front-loaded damage card. I would say that Crippling Cloud is probably the strongest of the poison cards for Silent at high difficulties, because it applies all of its poison in an AoE at once and blocks for you at the same time. But Noxious Fumes is great, and it's good against Slime Boss in particular. I'm just wondering if we also buy the Poison Potion and try not resting. And try killing Gremlin Knob without resting here. Take a look at how much damage we actually deal. So 30 on one turn, There's 24, 30 on another turn. Gremlin has like 80 HP. I think we'd probably take one hit, which probably means we want to rest. Although we could neutralize it. The other thing is our deck is starting to bloat with damage cards. We haven't added much that blocks for us in this entire run. We added a well-laid plans, which makes us more able to hold on to block cards for turns where we get attacked. But in Act 2, we're gonna just get attacked every turn for the most part. And we just don't have enough block cards in our deck. So removing a strike from the deck is very valuable here in order to increase the proportion of the deck that has block cards. I don't think any of the relics are strong enough to consider. These relics are just not strong compared to the cards and potions on offer. These like mediocre damage cards. In general, we can start to lump mediocre damage cards together in this round and say, we've got enough of those. Don't really want to add more of those to the deck, possibly ever. So we can start to stop talking about each of them individually. Probably Forethought is like actively bad. Chrysalis is like actively bad. So there's some consideration to not taking Noxious Fumes here. We already have the ability to beat Slime Boss, I think. We look at our deck right now, it's like our multi-target front-loaded damage is like a 6 or something. And our single-target front-loaded is like probably a 5 still. We're actually better at multi-targeting than single-targeting a little bit. Our mitigation's gotten probably worse. Our mitigation's probably like that or something. And our scaling mitigation's okay. It's like this. That's about where I'd put our deck at the moment. So we don't have any scaling damage is the thing. Noxious Fumes does multi-target stuff, which is nice, but it doesn't, it does scale. And that's probably the best thing about it. It starts to round out that. So if we took Noxious Fumes, we'd probably have like significant multi-target scaling damage and probably even a little bit better than that. I'm gonna aim for 5s as like decent. And 9s are like massive overkill, so I'm gonna call it a 4 if we bought Fumes, and single target scaling is like a 2 or something with Fumes. It seems like that rounds out our deck a little bit. Our card draw is probably more like 4 now that we have a bag of prep. I'm not gonna bother updating these a ton. I'm just gonna talk about what they're at. Okay, so yeah, I think we buy Fumes. Fumes is probably our upgrade now. I think that Poison Potion dealing probably 15 damage over 3 turns against Gremlin Knob, and then Gremlin Knob dies. 30, 30, 18. Hopefully. I think that's fine. I am going to rest, though, I think. And removing a strike is incredible. There's an argument for not buying Poison Potion and just saving the gold so that we could remove another strike, because removing strikes from this deck is going to become a really big deal. We really need to pivot this deck into being able to block against Act 2. Piercing Whale is probably the best card in the game for us right now. Dodge and rolls are incredible. There was a dodge and roll in this store, which I bought a Poison Potion instead of. We could have bought dodge and roll instead of Poison Potion. We could have like bought dodge and roll there and then rested. Stores are very hard. You get a lot of options and a lot to think about. And I actually think buying dodge and roll and resting was probably better there. But yeah, just like stores are difficult. Stores are difficult. So I believe I am going to rest too. That just seems sort of wrong. No, I think we have to rest too. The run might seem like it's going super well for us, but we have a Slime Boss Act 1 boss, and we had to take 5 Holy Fights at the start of the run, and we only get 2 elites in this act. So our deck isn't actually that strong for Act 2, or in general. just wanted to like throw that out there. It's sort of interesting. I feel like I've been talking a lot about how things have gone better than they could have, but despite that, we're still in rough shape overall. Getting to neutralize next turn is really nice. So we're actually going back to Skewer, how it lets us dump all of our energy into attacking one turn. With well-laid plans, it might seem like Skewer is the play this turn because it deals 30 damage and these guys deal 26, but holding Skewer for next turn is absolutely incredible, comparably. That's what we're doing. Because otherwise we wouldn't be able to deal any damage next turn at all. And with holding Skewer for next turn, we just kill Gremlin Knob before the big attack comes in. So that's a pretty nice fight. The Poison Potion was worth 18 health for us there. It's a pretty good deal. And we got a Pen Nib. A Pen Nib with Skewer plus and well-laid plans. If we can set that up, that's going to make Slime Boss fight quite manageable for us. But we do have to set it up. And our card choices are Accuracy, Dodge and Roll, Sucker Punch. We've talked about Sucker Punch to death. We talked about Accuracy already, and I just mentioned how Dodge and Roll was a very good card that we want to pivot towards. So this is pretty sweet. Let's take a Dodge and Roll. We still haven't seen a rare card. Our chance of seeing a rare card from like this hallway fight must be very high. So there's an argument for like going this way. This is something I don't know, and I would love it if somebody who could find out by reading the code or something would let me know in the comments if you're watching. I don't know if our chance to see a rare card from a card reward resets when we see the guaranteed rare card from the Slime Boss or not. But if it does, it's especially important that we take this hallway fight, I would say. Because I think right now we're at like a 30% chance or something for card generated to see a rare. And even if it doesn't, this hallway fight has a much higher chance than usual of giving us a rare card. So taking the event plus the fight over the store that we can't really buy anything in, and you'll remember at the start I said like we want to make our deck stronger every floor, so going to a floor where we're just not doing anything seems sort of bad. Going this way seems quite a bit better than going this way. Also, we get to charge Pen Nib, potentially. We don't really want a hallway fight here, so Juzu Bracelet. Damn it, Juzu Bracelet. We didn't pick up Juzu Bracelet. Whoops. First fight where we haven't had a great turn one, I feel like. But okay, turn one. We can go Footwork, Dodge and Roll, and Strike. But we didn't get well-laid plans into play. It's a fine turn one. Dagger Spray. Kills the Louse. Grab well-laid plans. And at this point, we're not taking damage in this fight unless we do something really, really weird. But Dodge and Roll did well there. I just hold Skewer rather than spending the 1 energy on it. Just like, I don't know. Playing Skewer would have worked too, I'm sure, but this way, I think might be better for Pen Nib. Well, we have another fight. Let's see. We actually do want to be thinking about where to leave Pen Nib. It seems like getting Pen Nib close to 10 here is a good idea. So let's go neutralize, Dagger Spray, Skewer, and we have Pen Nib on 8, which seems great. And our options are Calculated Gamble, Endless Agony, and Reflex. We talked about Endless Agony. I think we still can err away from taking that. Reflex is unplayable, so you don't have to analyze that card. It just says right on it whether or not you can take that one. Oh shit, I have the thing on the screen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Video ruined. I'll just start this one from scratch, I guess. Reflex. Sorry about that. Hopefully that wasn't too irritating. How long was that there for? Was that there for the entire Gremlin Knob fight? Oh. Reflex is a card which can be good in some weird situations, in the same way that Prepared doesn't actually draw you an extra card, it just replaces itself. Reflex, without being upgraded, just replaces itself. So you need to be discarding stuff a lot for Reflex to be great. If you have a hovering kite, Reflex can be an okay pickup. If you have like a lot of acrobatics, Reflex can be an okay pickup, but I'm not sure why you would have that many acrobatics. Calculated Gamble is a really interesting card. Calculated Gamble does two things well. Thing number one that Calculated Gamble does is it lets us take our 9-card starting hand, or maybe a 7-card hand with acrobatics or something like that, or with well-laid plans, right? We have a well-laid plan, so we might have 2 cards that we retain if we upgrade it, and then we draw 5 more and we end up with 7 cards. Let's just take that hand, and it lets us discard it and get closer to the cards that we want to deploy, which for this deck are like Noxious Fumes and Footwork are pretty important to deploy. Or it lets us get closer to the front-loaded stuff that we need if we're in a hallway fight. Generally, decks have several different modes that they can take through a fight depending on what is asked of them. So our deck, for example, can try to deal a lot of AoE damage with Dagger Sprays and Noxious Fumes, or it can try to deal a lot of single target damage with Skewer and Pen Nib, or it can try to scale very well with Footwork and Noxious Fumes. And so Calculated Gamble makes our deck much better at finding the pieces that it wants for this fight. Now, the downside of Calculated Gamble is that we have to draw it, and it's not card neutral, it's -1 card, because we draw it, and then if we discard 4 cards, we draw 4 cards, which means that we had to draw 5 cards to draw 4 cards. Lost a card in the deal. So that's the cost. Another cost is that it's not incredible with Snecko-Eye, it's not incredible with Choker. There are some relics that it doesn't interact super well with. It's not incredible against the Chosen, who puts dazes in your deck every time you play a skill. But overall, with a 9-card starting hand and a Noxious Fumes and a Footwork to deploy, I think that grabbing a Calculated Gamble is well worth it here. I'd give it like a +2 in this deck. The other thing it does, for what it's worth, because that was the first thing it does, the other thing it does is it makes Tough Bandages really good. Tough Bandages is a rare silent relic, which gives you +3 block every time you discard a card, and like, that relic is so strong with Calculated Gamble that you actually do think about the rare relic interaction with Calculated Gamble when you pick that card, because it's so strong. It's a very strong interaction. Okay, our goal in this fight is to leave Pen Nib at probably 9. Probably how we want to fight the slime boss is start our Pen Nib at 9, get 1 early Pen Nib, and then charge it up again for a second Pen Nib that will end the fight for us. The other option is get Pen Nib at like 3 and try to get a Skewer with it. It's interesting that we've gotten such easy hallway fights after fighting the hardest ones in the game right at the start. I guess there are 2 places we could leave Pen Nib. I guess I'm like leaving it at 3 after playing that turn like that. Interesting. Because I could have Pen Nib neutralized there, deliberately dealing less damage to give us longer in the fight, so that Pen Nib could charge up again. I'll just leave it at 3. 4. Leave it up. 4, 3. I think 3. That's our deck. Strike, strike, strike. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think 3. Gives us a decent chance of setting up a big Skewer on like turn 3. Ooh. So we talked about this earlier. Is it ever possible to have too many Noxious Fumes? And you might be thinking Noxious Fumes is so good in the slime boss fight and is such a strong card, right? But we've reached a point where Backflip's good already. We already have good front-loaded AoE damage, we have good scaling damage with our 1 Fumes, and we have a Pen Nib to even leverage our damage further with well-laid plans. Usually backflip doesn't start to get good until like halfway through Act 2 in my experience, but I think we've already reached a point where it's good here. We also have a calculated gamble, so it's very good at helping us dig through our deck to our well-laid plans, noxious fumes, and footwork, which are very good scaling cards for us to deploy. So backflip's really good here. I'd give backflip like a +2 and a noxious fumes like a +1.5. I think this is a pretty clear backflip pickup. Phantasmal Killer was our rare. We did finally see a rare. Wait a second. We have well-laid plans on a skewer. And a Pennib. Okay. So Phantasmal Killer does one thing incredibly strong, right? Phantasmal Killer makes it so when we Pennib our skewer the turn after we Phantasmal Killer, it will deal 120 damage, even if we're on 3 energy in Act 2. Here's the reason I'm going to take Backflip over a Phantasmal Killer. One, Backflip's really good. It achieves the things that our deck needs to do very well. If you look back at our deck, and I'm going to try to remember to close this before I keep playing the game this time, our card draw's not very good. It's like okay, but it's not incredible. Backflip ticks that up to like a 6 probably. With Calculated Gamble, we're probably at like a 9 with card manipulation. With Bagger Prep too. I didn't mention when I picked Calculated Gamble that it sort of sucks that it makes you discard a card that you're holding with well-laid plans, but that's something to consider for what it's worth. I'm gonna go back to 8. And that's really good. It makes our single target scaling mitigation a little bit better to have backflip and dodge and roll. Our multi-target mitigation still sucks. Our single target front-loaded damage just got incredible because of Pennib, and our multi-target, yeah. Our scaling damage is still only okay. When we upgrade Fumes, the next fire it will go up a little bit, maybe, to like that good. Our deck's looking okay. Phantasmal Killer would make it so our single target front-loaded damage was better, sometimes. It would take it like that. That does not round our deck out. That does not solve problems that we had. That tries to force us to do one thing really strong, but the solution that we're able to do that's really strong isn't good in a lot of places. It's not that good in AoE fights, for example. It's not that good in a fight where we don't have Pennib set up for the right time. It's not that good in all the fights where we don't draw Phantasmal Killer the turn before we draw Skewer. So we're trying to do something that's brutally strong, but which doesn't have the nuance required to actually solve the different problems that Slay the Spire presents us. Backflip is a much better, well-rounded card that is just better. It just does does better things for us. And we're gonna upgrade Fumes. Fumes helps us with the scaling elements of our damage, which again, that's something that we've been struggling with a little bit, and is very good in the Slime Boss fight as well. Alright, let's see how Slime Boss goes. This may be where the run ends. Slime Boss is a tough fight. Unfortunately, we drew Skewer turn 1. We're going to want to get back around to that again, so we're going to use Calculated Gamble to just discard all of these and look at other cards. These cards aren't incredible, they're not stuff that we really want to play this turn. These cards are better. Let's go Well-Laid Plans, Noxious Fumes for sure. We don't have to play Footwork here. We could deliberately discard Footwork even. Slime Boss is going to attack us for 38 on turn 3, but that won't kill us. It would be really weird for that to kill us because we are allowed to block and stuff like that. We're also allowed to weaken Slime Boss. We could go Dagger Spray Strike. We could go Dagger Spray Strike and hold Backflip. We could go Dagger Spray Backflip. Dagger Spray Backflip actually seems pretty good. That way we reshuffle our draw pile next turn without all of these extra block cards in it. And we draw towards Skewer again. I really like it. We're at 5 on the pen nib. This is a very difficult deck to play correctly. I like this, and we just hold strike. I think people might underestimate sometimes how much there is in playing your deck right in Slay the Spire and increasing your win rate. Okay, so here we can go strike, 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 put pen nib on 8, and then try to draw Skewer next turn, but it's just not that likely that we will. And we got such a good blocking solution with footwork, dodge and roll, hold, defend, that I'm just gonna do that, and we'll take almost no damage from the slam. Most likely. Just defend, defend, defend. Take 11, no big deal. I don't think there's a reason to panic and use a potion. We want to hold on to Slimed. 2 things it does. 1, if we reshuffle our draw pile with Slimed in hand, Slime doesn't go back in our hand again. And 2, if we wanted to exhaust Slimed next turn, would have access to it. Okay, now we want to set up our pen nib Skewer for next turn. Oh, damn. Do some math. So 21, then 12, 9, 3. We can play Dagger Spray Plus here. We're just setting up a pen nib Skewer to end the fight, basically. Go Dagger Spray. He's at 100, 92, 86. Just gotta make sure we don't go below 75, obviously. Slime Boss, you are dead. Good fight. Let's try to scale pen nib up toward going off again for Act 2 on the end of this fight. Just play as many attacks as we can. Perfect. We have to decide if we want to discard our smoke bomb. My feeling is that we do. It seems like our deck is strong enough to beat all the fights. And our options are Tools of the Trade, Phantasmal Killer again, and Nightmare. Nightmare is an immensely powerful card, which doesn't work very well in our deck right now. Just, we don't have a guarantee of having 4 energy, which is awkward, and while we have well-laid plans to hold Nightmare and copy something super strong, we don't have anything super strong to copy. Copying Footwork is, like, way too slow. In general, Nightmare is a card that would be good against, like, the Act 2 boss, probably, but won't be good until then. So Nightmare for me is like a -1. It's a card that I'm happy to have, especially if I'm going intangible for mitigation later on in the run, but which isn't doing very much for me right now. Tools of the Trade, start of your turn, draw 1 card and discard 1 card. This is a very slow card. I generally would rather not have a Tools of the Trade in my deck, just because it's very slow. On turn 1, we have to draw it and play it. That costs us 1 energy and 1 card draw, and as of turn 1, we have received no benefit from it, and then on turn 2, we draw and discard a card. So as of turn 2, the turn after we've played it, we've lost 1 energy, we've gone neutral on card draws, and we've discarded 1 card. So as of turn 2, this card is significantly worse than unupgraded Prepared, which is not a high bar. I think Tools of the Trade is like a -1 or -2 maybe. It's a card that helps us set up to be strong in boss fights if a fight's going to go very long, and it's a card which turns on discard synergies, but silence discard synergies are not strong enough to put a card that is that bad into your deck unless you have very good reason. Like if we had tough bandages, maybe we pick up Tools of the Trade here, but we don't. So this is just whether Phantasmal Killer is better than skipping or not. I think it is. I think it is slightly better than skipping. But it's really close. Something I haven't really pointed out yet in my heuristics is like when you add Phantasmal Killer to your deck, it's not just that you get better at like single target front loaded or whatever. Like it's probably actually only an 8 or something. Well, we'll call it scaling damage maybe. Maybe our single target scaling damage gets better. You also get worse at everything else because your deck has to do all these other jobs, right? And this card doesn't do the other jobs, and it costs 1 card draw to have it in your deck. So all of a sudden you're worse at drawing the cards that do the other jobs. That said, it is one very strong thing that we can do. I can imagine it being very strong against the Act 2 boss. I can imagine it being quite strong against Book of Stabbing, and quite strong even against Gremlin Leader and Tri-Slavers. If it were upgraded, I would take it in a second. And we only have 2 relics from Act 1. We're very behind on relics. I just think it's too slow. Yeah, I just think it's too slow. If we had Piercing Whales, I would be more inclined to take it because we'd be more able to front load mitigation, but we're very bad at front loading mitigation too, so it's just unclear to me when we get to play this card without taking like 50 damage. And we can't heal, really. We're very bad at healing. Like I said, I don't think we need a Smoke Bomb. I think our deck, especially with 2 skill potions, is able to beat the fights in Act 2, and we certainly need the card rewards from the fights in Act 2. And our boss relic pick is between Ring of the Serpent, which replaces Ring of the Snake, so it would only have 8 cards in our starting hand, but then would have 6 cards drawn every hand from then on. This is an okay relic. It's particularly good in a deck which doesn't need a 4th energy, but does want to draw more cards. A deck like ours with 2 Piercing Whales, I would say. Like a deck which has a little bit more front-loaded mitigation, and then it helps us like deploy our powers faster a little bit. It sort of doesn't because we draw 1 less card turn 1, right? But it smooths out our ability to play later on in the fight. I think our deck with well-laid plans and backflip like doesn't really need it very much for that job. So I'd rather take this than skipping, but not by much. Busted Crown gains us an energy at the start of our turn, but we see 2 fewer cards from card reward screens. This is a card that will get us through Act 2 and then we'll lose the run, because our most likely source of mitigation is picking up a lot of good block commons, and we're going to see 1/3 as many if we take this card, and we'll just die. There are also some very nice rares, which become much harder to find if we pick up Busted Crown. So I think this is going to be a Hovering Kite. We gain an energy and discard 2 cards at the start of our turn. Hovering Kite is a pretty unique energy relic. It's not good at all with Calculated Gamble, because all of a sudden we only have a 3-card hand a lot of turns, and so Calculated Gamble doesn't really work. It's good with Backflip, it's okay with Bag of Preparation, it's okay with well-laid plans, it's pretty good with Skewer. Without help, we're going to have 3 cards every turn and 4 energy, which like means that something like Skewer is very helpful, so we can actually put our energy towards something. It's far from being my favorite energy relic, but if we pick up Tough Bandages or some more card draw or something like that, it doesn't end the run that we have to take Hovering Kite at all. And it can actually become actively good for us if we pick up the right sorts of synergies. Let's look at how we're going to get stronger in this act. We fight against Hyper Beam. I think we're already pretty okay at this fight. Hopefully we can pick up some more sources of weak and maybe a Piercing Whale or two, maybe a Malaise, and get significantly better at it. We have 162 gold right now, and in Act 2, the hallway fights are just atrocious. They are not good. So it's always fun to get to go to a store and get something out of it early in Act 2, because right now in Act 2, easy hallways would probably take like honestly, like 15 damage on average. In Act 2, hard hallways is probably more like 25 at the moment. You know, we have a pen nib and a bag of prep. I'm gonna bring these numbers a little bit down. And dagger spray upgraded. Against slavers, I imagine we take like 40. These are numbers without using potions. Our potions will improve these numbers. Against Gremlin Leader, I actually think we're pretty good. We'd probably take like 12 on average in that fight. Against Book of Stabbing, it depends if we get our pen nibbed skewer off a little bit. I'm gonna guess that we're around about 45 damage against Book of Stabbing. Not sure about the bosses right now. Probably actually pretty good against Champ. Obviously, like, the bosses that aren't Automaton don't matter, right? So we could actually just delete them. Who cares? Against Automaton, I'm gonna guess that we take like 50 damage. I think we actually win that fight if we go to that fight right now. Noxious Fumes plus well-laid plans and footwork is gonna do a decent job. So basically what I'm saying is that hallway fights are terrible for us. If we could go like this way... You know, I said that this deck wasn't that bad at hallway fights earlier. When I didn't take Juzu Bracelet. I guess we didn't get there. Oh, because we don't have Piercing Whales. We just got block. Yeah. It's too bad. We can get through this act with like no relics by taking this path. This just like dodges the entire act just about. I think the problem with it is that we don't get stronger by doing it, and we probably have to get stronger to win the run. I think what I'm gonna do is go to this hallway fight, and then maybe I go left and take a lot of elites and rest a lot, and we don't get upgrades, but we get relics and rare cards and gold, and there's a store at the end of the act. It's a bit of a trial by fire. Or if things are going really nasty, we can take this campfire. We could maybe rest and take the Super Elite. The Super Elite's not that much worse than the other elites. It's like a couple of potions worse maybe, but it's still possibly winnable. This is an act which I think we die in maybe about half the time, just looking at it right now. And the reason, even though things seem like they may have been going pretty well for us, is that we don't have great rares, and we don't have a great boss relic, and we don't have really any other relics from Act 1. Bagger Prep and Pen Nib are a bit, but they're not enough for us to be doing super well. So this is the way I'm going to be going. There's like maybe some merit to talking about this path. It's not a terrible path. Feels like it lacks flexibility. If things go well for us, we can't really take a ton of elites. We could take 3 elites in a row there, but we'd have no campfire at all to rest. And if things go poorly for us, we're still forced into elite anyway, instead of being able to dodge the elite going this direction. So the flexibility of this left path seems a little bit more valuable to me than the right path, which is okay. I would describe it as just okay. Choose 2 cards to discard. Oh, hovering kite, you fiend. Well, this is unpleasant. The birds are not attacking us this turn, which means they're all going to attack us next turn. It would be nice to draw 2 dagger sprays at the same time in this fight. On Ascension 20, you have to hit a bird 4 times in the same turn to knock it out of the sky. If I had 2 more cards in hand, going for backflip toward calculated gamble would be sort of nice, because if we calculated gamble with a 10 card hand, we hit 2 dagger sprays almost always and win the fight. I think there's a pretty good argument for a skill potion here. It's also completely fine to go Noxious Fumes and Neutralize Skewer one of them. There's nothing that bad about it doing that. It should be better than playing Footwork. If we go Footwork Neutralize Skewer, I think we have to hit double Dagger Spray, or else we just take a ton of damage. Whereas if we get Noxious Fumes in play, the fight actually ends at some point, which is nice. It's going to be hard for us to ever play well-laid plans. Our deck got a lot worse when we sort of whiffed on our Energy Relic. We also have a Pen-Nib Dagger Spray coming up, but it doesn't actually deal that much damage. Alright, we're going to go Neutralize Noxious Fumes Skewer. It's possible that this fight goes so badly for us that we should have skill potted and looked for help there, though. I might skill push on this turn instead. Oh, hey. Easy. Easy game. And, I mean, that's just variance. Going back to, like, the smoke bomb and not having the smoke bomb and how the smoke bomb might be important, like, yeah, that was just variance. We know exactly what the last two cards are. Let's go defend and look for well-laid plans. Cool. We don't want to play another attack because we want to hold on to this Pen-Nib, right? Have Pen-Nib ready to go for the next fight. Yeah, drawing those two Dagger Sprays at the same time saved us probably 20 plus health. Took no damage in the fight, didn't use a potion. Okay. So Catalyst is a very powerful card, but it's probably only like the 4th or 5th best poison card, and it's a card which relies on us having other poison cards already to be good at all. Right now it's about like a -1 or -2, I would say. Just not very good. If we had to fight Champ in this act, I would probably take Catalyst, but we don't have to fight Champ. Champ is a fight where dealing a lot of damage all at once avoids the second half of the fight where Champ is enraged and does more intimidating attacks, but we're not fighting Champ, so Catalyst's value there goes down a lot. I'd like to have one Catalyst in this deck probably by the end of the run, but now isn't the time to add it. Deflect is one of those block cards, which is great, but we don't draw enough cards in our hand every turn because we're discarding 2, so like we can't spend our energy. And Deflect seems pretty bad for that reason. I'm going to take an Acrobatics. This is a card that is usually great to have 1 or 2 of once you're on 4 energy, and especially with Hovering Kite, we're wanting this so that we can dig through our deck, spend our energy more efficiently, stuff like that. This is a card that we'll probably play most of the time that we draw it now that we have Hovering Kite, would be my guess. And we're trying to dodge hallway fights, so we're going to the store. Hi, hallway fight. Juzu Bracelet. Have we actually had an event yet this run? I'm not sure that we've had a single event yet this run. Alright, having a Pen-Nib Skewer on turn 1 seems pretty nice here. We're gonna kill the back Mugger all at once. The Mugger has a little bit more health and also deals more damage and blocks for more on turn 3 and 4. The way the AI in these work is the first 2 turns they always attack, and they always attack for the same number. On turn 3, there's a 50-50 chance that they attack or block, and the Mugger will attack for more than the Looter. And then otherwise they block, or they block on turn 4 if they attacked on turn 3, and the Mugger blocks for more than the Looter. So the Mugger is like the slightly more intimidating one. I think that we just Fumes, Skewer, Neutralize. It seems sort of wrong. I think we backflip. And we're mostly backflipping for the 5 block, but it's better to draw 2 cards here than not draw 2 cards. That's fine. Now we're gonna skewer with our 3 energy. I'm gonna neutralize to block for another 3. And then our deck does have well-laid plans in it, so I think it makes some sense to calculate a gamble toward that. That's a miss. Too bad. Against 1 looter, our deck shouldn't be that bad. Oh, nice hand. It's gonna take another 6 here. So worth it to use a skill potion. We're about to go to a store. I think it actually is. Skill potions aren't always the best. Let's hold on to reflex so we can discard it next turn. Take another 6. That's too bad. We're likely gonna buy a potion in the next store anyway. So that's like mostly fine. Attacking for 14 means neutralized reduces by 4, right? Yeah. When I get this pen nib up toward 9 charges again. Looking good. We win the fight. And we actually leave with pen nib at 8. 8. It's okay. 8's not bad at all. Deadly Poison, Sneaky Strike, Eviscerate. So Deadly Poison is single target scaling damage, but probably a little bit weak for our deck right now. It might seem like Sneaky Strike's good, because we're already discarding a card every turn, but we need cards that do something, and specifically we need cards that block for us. We're very bad at blocking at the moment. And Sneaky Strike, like, making us 2 energy just doesn't do much. It's just not great. It doesn't achieve a whole lot. Eviscerate, another card where discarding 2 cards every turn does something. It makes it an 18 damage 2 energy card, basically, which is significantly worse than Skewer Plus and has no strong interactions in our deck otherwise at the moment. I think that these cards are all skips. I'd go like minus 0.5, -1, -3 or something. Okay. Save me, store. There are some very good relics in this store. Kunai, like, is actually a little bit slow and probably wouldn't be great in this deck, but Mercury Hourglass would be incredible for killing Act 2 elites with. And Orange Pellets, whenever you play a power attack and skill in the same turn, remove all your debuffs. This is a very, very, very strong relic. I think taking a backflip is almost mandatory in this store. And then it's just a matter of whether we buy Backstab to help with our elite killing here in Act 2. Backstab is a card which is very good at killing elites in Act 2. Or we can card remove instead. Card removing strike. I've talked about how card removing strikes is valuable in this deck. It might seem like removing strikes is a little bit less relevant now that we can just discard them when we draw them and don't want to play them anyway, since we have to discard 2 cards every turn anyway, right? But strike being in our deck still prevents us from drawing like Noxious Fumes instead. So it's still slowing us down from getting to the cards that we actually want. And when we finally get a Piercing Whale in this deck to be able to front load some mitigation, being able to draw that Piercing Whale sooner rather than later is going to help us a lot to win the run. So I think this is just a backflip card remove, unfortunately. Maybe Backstab's good enough. Let's go Backstab and go for these elites. We gotta make this deck strong somehow, and it's always a really interesting inflection point in Act 2, where like the chance of killing yourself going for something in Act 2, or the chance of dying later because you added cards like Backstab to your deck and they get in the way of your deck being a good late game deck, gets weighed against the... What is the realistic chance that we win this run by leaving Act 2 without more relics right now? It's not that high. There are so many good relics in this game and they do so many good things. Plus we get gold from the elites. Yeah, I think this is a backstab. Okay. Buying another well-late. I did not realize I had 80 gold there. I'm going, this is sort of cheesy, but you can reset a store. Not something that I really ever do on stream, but this is like an educational thing, and I did not want to well-laid plans there, so let's play the run properly instead. Buying another well-laid plans there is not completely unreasonable at all. I just want to throw that out there. I'm gonna grab an energy potion with Skewer and Pendib. This seems like an excellent way to deal a little bit of extra damage. Oh, Piercing Whale, where are you? Alright. Probably we just Pendib a Skewer next turn and end this fight. We take 4 damage this turn. It's not so bad. I'm going to hold on to Calculated Gamble to try to draw a Skewer. No need. The problem is we don't have Pendib for next fight, but this fight's going to deal us so much damage if we don't take this that I think we have to. How about going Footwork? No. We could like try going Footwork, Skewer, putting it at 9 health, but we can't even kill it next turn, and we take a bunch of damage. This debuff is like frail and weak, which is pretty nasty. Alright. Good fight. 3 Phantasmal Killers. Wow. Wow. There's another Noxious Fumes here. I do not think it's necessary. It seems pretty slow. I think I'm going to take this Phantasmal Killer. This is the 3rd time it has been offered this round. Now we can discard it if we don't want to play it. And that maybe gets us to the point where I'm actually excited to have it. Also, I do want to be able to do something strong, and this is definitely something strong. It's not the something strong that I want, because it's not strong enough to win Act 4, I don't think. But it's definitely something strong. I'm going to turn Beta Art off for you. I'd also like to upgrade it. Can I upgrade it? No, that doesn't work. That doesn't stay if you do that. That's unfortunate. I'm also going to go Block Potion over Skill Potion. We saw earlier how Skill Potion's pretty unreliable at times. Skill Potion's nasty. Attack Potion, like, you almost always get something that deals damage. Power Potion, you almost always get something that scales you through the fight. Skill Potion, skills do a lot of different things. Sometimes you, like, draw cards. Sometimes you triple an enemy's poison and it doesn't have any poison on it. Sometimes you get more energy next turn. Like, it's hard to plan around that potion. The variance in the potion is not a good thing for the player because you want your potion to do the job that you need on the turn that you use it. Usually you're using a potion because you need to do something extra this turn, and the potion does that. And if you don't know what the skill potion does, it makes it pretty hard to pull that off. Well, there's our Phantasmal Killer socking. We can double up the Skewer next turn. I'm going to discard Ascender's Bane and dodge and roll. Dagger Spray. I'm going to backflip. And what I'm going to do here is we get hexed by the Chosen so that every time we play a skill, a daze goes in our drop pile. And I would like to get through my deck, basically. Reshuffle the deck so that our draw pile isn't just full of dazes. So I'm going to use Calculated Gamble this turn. Let's go Fumes, Footwork. Backstab, Skewer? Calculated Gamble? Unfortunately, we drew all of our cards, like, straight away. I wanted to draw them after Calculated Gamble, so that I could draw more cards with Calculated Gamble. This makes things sort of awkward, because we're not actually getting that deep in the deck. I'm also going to Energy Potion for more damage on the Skewer. I think getting that Cultist stud is pretty important. Fight where we could take some damage for sure. We're becoming vulnerable. It was better. It was better to hold a defend. Oh, that's the first like clear mistake I've made this run. I forgot that I had a Fumes in play. It was better to hold a defend and go defend and neutralize strike the bird. Oh, so we're down 4 health from that. Game's really hard. That's okay, the game's just difficult. Sometimes things don't go perfectly. Speaking of things not going perfectly, so we can go backflip here. That reshuffles our draw pile, makes the dazes a little bit less threatening. And then we can just like play well-laid plans, defend, 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 block for 31. Ouch. I'd like to hold on to backflip for next turn, I think. Just go neutralize Skewer this turn. This fight's going to be over quickly enough that we can just be discarding dazes at this point. We're looking for block cards. We didn't do a great job of finding them. If we're going to use the Luck Potion, we want to get the full 10 health out of it, and it was going to be difficult to do that there. So, let's see. Probably go Phantasmal Killer. I guess it doesn't matter, the Chosen is just dead. We can choose whether we want Pendib on 9 or 10 here. I think I'd rather have it on 9. Or 9 or 8, sorry. Misspoke. Okay. My brain is starting to give up on this run a little bit. I've been thinking very hard for a very long time. 2 crappy damage commons and a Reflex. I talked about how Reflex was okay with Hovering Kite. I think that this is a situation where it's okay. I think it is only okay. You might think Reflex is like a slam pick here. I think it's slightly better than skipping, but keep in mind that if I backflip into Reflex, I don't get to discard it. Like, it's just stuck in my hand and not doing anything. So when we draw it off Acrobatics or off our starting draw for each turn, we do get to discard it, and with Calculated Gamble we get to discard it. We get to discard it most of the time, but we do have 4 card draws in our deck. So probably like 10 to 20% of the time that we draw it, we don't get to discard it. And that's a thing to consider. It's an okay pickup. It would be an okay upgrade even, I think. And we just have to go for this fight. I don't think there's much reason not to. We can bail out and go this way and just lose the run. No, it's time to trial by fire our deck and see if we can make this strong enough to win. Book of Stabbing's not the one that we wanted, unfortunately. So we deal 160 with Pen Nib and Phantasmal Killer. I think what we do is we block a lot, and we try to deal 160 with Pen Nib and Phantasmal Killer. We could try to cycle all the way through and play 9 attacks, but it seems very difficult for our deck. Noxious Fumes deals the rest of the damage that we have to deal. We can actually go Laid Plans, Phantasmal Killer, Noxious Fumes, Calculated Gamble, and I think we win next turn. I think we're actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Seems very difficult for us not to win next turn if we do that. Wait, Noxious Fumes doesn't deal 12 damage straight away though, it's slower. So Laid Plans, Phantasmal Killer, Calculated Gamble, I think is our play. I don't know how we block next turn. Badly. Not. We don't block next turn. What about Laid Plans, Footwork, Defend, Defend, Defend? Hold Phantasmal Killer. Next turn we get attacked for 28. We Phantasmal Killer. 3, 5. Nothing quite lines up. We're just ever so slightly short. I know we have the block potion, but that doesn't quite do enough. We just can't quite survive next turn, unfortunately. Ooh. Also, I already played an Acrobatics, so I only have 2 defends if I go Footwork, Defend, Defend. Oh, here's the line. We actually go Laid Plans, Phantasmal Killer, and hold on to Backstab. And then we just have to hit Skewer next turn. Wow, that's pretty ballsy. We die a lot. But we do win the fight. Sometimes. Are we 1 damage short there even? 11 plus 106. We're 1 damage short there. Would have to draw Neutralize as well, or would have to play Fumes this turn. We can go Laid Plans, Fumes, Phantasmal Killer. Go to 3. Hold Backstab, and then we have to hit Skewer. Well, that's exciting. If there's a way to win the fight more often than that, we want to do it, right? But I mean, is there a way to win the fight more often than that? This is the worst of the elite fights that we could get. It's an okay draw at least. Our Pen Nib would be better on 8 than 9 in this fight. Mostly because of how we draw cards, though, for what it's worth. No, it's probably always better on 8. I think that 9 was a mistake. Because we're going to be able to strike Backstab in other fights, or Dagger Spray Backstab or something. I think that's the line. Unless I'm wrong and we do survive somehow off the block potion. We have 36 health against 49 damage. We don't, though. Just don't. 41 health against 41. Yeah, we don't. All right. Should have played neutralize first. I think that might have been the only way to win the fight, so that's pretty cool. We got a strawberry for plus 7 HP. I like having more HP. Unload, poison stab, flying knee. These are basically damage commons. We don't really want more damage commons in our deck right now, so these card rewards are pretty crap. Those are all just worse than not having them. There's maybe an argument for Unload, but Unload has pretty strong anti-synergy with well-laid plans. It has some synergy with Reflex, but having to discard your card that you're holding with well-laid plans makes Unload quite awkward sometimes. We're gonna have to rest. We don't have Pen Nib for the next fight, so there you go. No Piercing Wail for this one. And no Pen Nib. Or at least no Pen Nib anytime soon. I think this is a situation where we are playing Acrobatics. We want to draw toward our Dagger Sprays, our Well-Laid Plans, our Footwork. These are all good cards. Against the Slavers, the Vulnerable from the back Slaver is the most frightening thing in this fight. So we want to be focusing this guy down as quickly as possible. That's where our backstab's going to go. And then I do want to get Footwork in play. I do want to play 2 block cards. We might as well use this block potion now. I don't see any reason why we would want to save it here. And I'm not going to be playing strikes in this fight, I don't think. Not right now, at least. We drew Phantasmal Killer on the turn when we were getting entangled. However, we have an artifact potion, so we can't cancel that entangle. So if we discard Calculated Gamble, we can spend this turn going Fumes, Phantasmal Killer, Neutralize, Defend. And next turn we can have a big Phantasmal Killer turn, hopefully. There's actually a pretty good argument for holding the Calculated Gamble now that I think about it. Go Fumes, Phantasmal Killer, Defend, don't bother neutralizing, use the Ancient Pot. And then next turn, we're going to Dagger Spray for 24. And then another 16, 40 AoE damage. Plus like a Strike and a Skewer, hopefully. We don't have that many cards available. Backflip will get us there. All right. This is such a fun Silent deck. I'm so glad that we got such an interactive deck for a run where I was going to think really hard and talk a lot about what was happening. Even if we don't win this run, I think it's been a very enjoyable one. So we're definitely going to backflip. Here's our Dagger Spray plus. I guess just another backflip? Right? We can calculate it, gamble, but like what is the point exactly? I was hoping to have drawn the other dagger spray by now so that I could go dagger spray again and then skewer for 20. But it looks like we're just going to backflip into the other dagger spray and hold on to Jaw General, Skewer, Calculated Gamble. I might have to hold on to Calculated Gamble. Do all attacks do the same thing? I think all attacks do the same thing, and we need to draw like one attack and one block card next turn, basically. So Calculated Gamble lets us pick which one we're drawing. And I should have played Skewer for a pen nib charge. It's another clear mistake. There's no reason not to there. Okay. That's gonna get us through the fight, okay? Look for one more attack. Neutralize. Bottled Lightning. We can choose a skill and start with it in our opening hand. Ooh, Expertise Plus is pretty solid with Hovering Kite. That is going to like draw us a lot of cards when we play it, and I'm pretty happy to have it in the deck, I think. Let's grab that. Bottle a skill and start with it in our opening hand. Phantasmal Killer jumps out as one that could be pretty nice to get turn 2 as our big combo turn. Calculated Gamble is quite nice. Calculated Gamble is probably better than Phantasmal Killer. Yeah, I think starting with Calculated Gamble. We can discard it if we want. Could also start with Reflex. Reflex is not a terrible one to start with. Would always discard it. But in our opening hand, we can already probably find 2 cards that we're happy to discard. So discarding Reflex isn't quite as valuable in our opening hand as it is in later hands, I imagine. I think we'll bottle a Calculated Gamble. Alright. A Peace Pipe. We can remove cards from our deck at rest sites. We have added 3 relics to our deck, and they have not really made our deck much better. I think I'll spend 85 gold for another one. Spending 85 gold here seems better than having a Shame in my deck. Actually, that's arguable. We can discard the Shame most of the time. And there is a store here that we may really want to have gold for. Sometimes we can't discard the Shame, and it just kills us. Alright, I'm going to buy the relic. It's the boot. These relics are not very good. Okay. We gotta rest again. We are now out of potions. This is not a super easy hallway fight either. I think going Footwork, Defend, Neutralize on the big attacker, Noxious Fumes, and then Calculated Gamble looking for more block is what we're gonna do to get things started. And I think I will take 7 block over the Expertise. There wasn't that much we were going to draw with Expertise that was going to save us there. Here we'll just defend, dodge and roll, Phantasmal Killer. It would be nice to leave this fight with Pen Nib at 8, I think. I think that's where we want it. The enemy has 85 health and we have 85 damage. This run is just absolutely insane. Okay. So we're still alive for a second longer. Pennib at 8 is what we said. I think we're pretty happy with Pennib at 8. Maybe it would have been better to play the defense before the backflip so that my draw pile had more defensive cards in it. Small thing, but I think that was another clear mistake. Okay, we know how to beat Buko Stabbing. We just Pennib a big skewer. These cards are not saving us. Nothing about these cards is super strong. Gremlin Leader. Gremlin Leader I actually think we're pretty good at beating, just in general. Turn 1 attack is scary. We can go... Nibbed Dagger Spray to kill everything. Backflip, defend, and Will-Aid plans. Something like that. Let's backflip and see what's coming. Ooh, no defensive cards there, unfortunately. So I guess we'll backstab to get Pennib turned on. Dagger Spray. Noxious Fumes, defend. And I'm going to hold on to Phantasmal Killer here, and we'll just set up a Phantasmal Killer'd Skewer to end the fight pretty quickly, I imagine. Gremlin Leader will never attack twice in a row, and there's, I believe, a 70% chance that he buffs next turn instead of attacking next turn. Let's go Footwork, Phantasmal Killer, and our Pennib's gone. I think I'm going to just choose to die if we get attacked next turn. I don't see us... Wait a second, it's only... He hasn't buffed yet, it's only for 18. No. Well, we really want to hold the Dagger Spray is the thing. To deal with the ads. Oh, this is so hard. This is a situation where working it out takes more time than I would ever spend on stream, but let's think about this for a bit. We have to think about which gremlins can be summoned as well. I feel like Fat Gremlin is so threatening here that we just have to hold Dagger Spray. Yeah, I think so. We are getting attacked again. So we're gonna have to block for a bit. We're going to have to play Acrobatics, right? It's a nasty assortment of gremlins. 16, 22. We're gonna have to play Dagger Spray. It's not enough. We have to play Acrobatics. I think we might actually just be deterministically dead here. We have to play Acrobatics, Dagger Spray, Skewer, block for more than we can. Yeah, we're actually just deterministically dead here. There's no solution, unfortunately. Oh, gosh. If we'd held Survivor, would we be okay? I think we'd just be dead if we held Survivor as well. Does Boot save us? Boot doesn't save us. Alright, well if we're deterministically dead, we can die whichever way we choose, obviously. We see that there is no path through this that saves us. Ooh. There is actually one path. Acrobatics, backflip into Dagger Spray plus. Saves us. So that's what we play for. Would Neutralize be out there as well? Neutralize might be an out there as well, so we might want to play Neutralize as well. Oh, I don't even draw enough cards. Turns out that that isn't a thing. $14.8. Oh, we're good. We go defend. This took me so long to see. Defend. Neutralize. Skewer. Keeps us alive. Then next turn, Gremlin Leader's always buffing or summoning. I think I would like to have a dagger spray for that, I believe, but it's a pretty hard choice. Okay. We're hoping for Gremlin Leader to buff next turn again. Gremlin Leader attacked again. This time, though, Dagger Spray clears the minions and then Survivor just blocks. Oh my gosh. Dagger Spray plus Strike clears the minions. And Survivor blocks. Backflip block. We have to go Dagger Spray, Strike, Survivor, Backflip. We have to play every card that we have in our hand here. Okay, against Automaton, we probably want Pendib around about 7, so this is probably fine. We probably want it to go off on turn 2. We made it to the Act 2 boss. Whenever you receive 5 or less unblocked damage, reduce it to 1. That's the strongest relic that we've seen, except maybe Pendib and Bag of Prep back in Act 1. Does not do very much against Hyper Beam. Unfortunately. Predator might be alright here. It's going to be interesting to work out how we're beating getting attacked for 56 in one turn. Is Tactician, Pendib, Phantasmal Killer, deals 200 damage with Skewer. It's quite a lot of damage. I think I'll take a Tactician. Try to make the strong thing that we do stronger. Ooh, tough bandages. And Venom could apply some poison for us. We do have Dagger Sprays. And we have a Noxious Fumes, and we have a Skewer. I think I like Envenom here. I think we benefit from dealing damage faster, and while buying a steroid potion for our skewer turn could probably win us the fight, I think that Envenom is a card that helps our deck a lot in the long term, so I'm going to slightly increase my chance to lose this fight by buying Envenom over Steroid Potion. I think Steroid Potion's better than Power Potion or Poison Potion. After having played all of that Act 2, I'm going to increase my chance to die to the boss with the store purchase in order to increase my chance to win the run overall, I think. I think it is possible for us to win this boss fight. Definitely. 22 health. We can go Phantasmal Killer and then Pen Nib a Dagger Spray next turn. Seems really good. Dodge and roll for next turn as well. There's the problem where if we draw one of these cards off backflip, it's just not doing anything. I believe this is a situation where blocking and holding footwork is what we want to do. Although either blocking and holding skewer or playing footwork and holding skewer both seem pretty good too. Blocking blocks for 6 rather than 5 because Tori will reduce incoming damage by a little bit extra with it. Yeah, I'm okay with that. And then we should have played Skewer. Another clear mistake. Should have played Skewer there. But we get things set up. And hopefully starting next turnish, we're doing pretty well and we can set up for another big turn to kill Automaton with our next Pen Nib charge or something like that. Ooh. Uh-oh. Well, this is Expertise's first time to shine. I feel like that was the first time in the entire run that our deck did something strong without needing Pen Nib to do it. That was pretty exciting to me. I'm gonna want to hold Dodge and Roll. Dodge and Roll seems like the only way I possibly survive the big attack that's coming on the turn after next. So we might as well just Skewer. Actually, we have Boot, so Boot deals an extra 4 damage with Skewer. That's really funny. And yeah, I will hold Dodge and Roll. Dodge and Roll's like probably the best card in the deck to play next turn. These cards are fine to draw next turn as well, so we don't need to play an Acrobatics. We can just apply our damage. I do want to draw a Defend, though, right? No, Backflip will get us another defensive card, probably. And Venom did some good work there. We want to draw Neutralize. It's sort of important. Hello again, Phantasmal Killer. Hey, we whiffed. 41, 48. Unfortunately, that's where it ends. Another block card wouldn't have even done it. We needed neutralize specifically. I don't think there was a way to be holding neutralize here. We could have tried to set up a pen-nibbed skewer, but I don't think it would have worked. So that's going to be it for this one. Alright, so we didn't make it to the heart. I feel like this run was incredible. I'm very happy to upload it. I think there was a lot of stuff to think about. A lot of good demonstrations of playing through different fights, talking about how to build the deck, and explaining why I was building the deck the ways I was. And we also got to see the deck perform in the fights that it had to fight in ways that it was able to perform only because of specifically how it was built. So I thought this was a pretty good instructive run. Unfortunately, we didn't get a heart kill. That's okay. Sometimes you don't kill the heart. Ascension 20 is very difficult, and getting to Act 4 even without Ascension is quite hard. What could have made this run go better? Well, a big issue for us was that in our Act 1, we were forced into a lot of hallway fights. We didn't get a lot of relics, and we didn't get a lot of premium cards. Well-laid plans, footwork, and noxious fumes are all great, but we didn't get to remove many strikes, is another one to point out, and we had to add a lot of mediocre attack-focused cards. Our deck has a lot of extra cards dedicated to this pen nib. Like, the skewer is an extra card that is dedicated to making the pen nib do a lot of damage, which wouldn't need to be in our deck if we had a relic like Mercury Hourglass instead of pen nib. We could just get damage from the Mercury Hourglass without needing a bunch of cards dedicated toward it. And the dagger sprays are cards that are in the deck because of Slime Boss, and they were alright throughout Act 2, for sure. Dagger Spray is an alright card. But there could have been a Mercury Hourglass and a Crippling Cloud in the deck instead of 2 Dagger Sprays, and the deck would have been much better, and it would have done better in those hallway fights and elite fights, I think, probably. So we had to make do with what we were offered, which is the beauty of Slay the Spire. But the deck is a little bit weaker and a little bit more bloated than it maybe needs to be. Our boss relic was not great. Hovering Kite, it didn't really hurt us that much discarding 2 cards. We had enough card draw. But like taking the acrobatics super early in the act, that largely happened because of Hovering Kite. And if we hadn't needed to take the acrobatics, I forget what we took it over. I don't think there were other great cards. But if we didn't need to be playing it on some of those turns and just had 4 energy instead, and could have drawn the next card instead of drawing acrobatics, we could have had some better turns probably. Phantasmal Killer was fascinating in this run because we got offered it 3 times. And we saw it go off, right? We eventually reached a point where we did have the well-laid plans and we did actually need what it was offering us, and we just hadn't found a different solution yet. But we also got to see that it was a pretty clunky card a lot of the time. I think we drew it twice on that turn where we just died instead of like a weakening card. We got offered 2 Sucker Punches and never got offered any other source of weak. Interesting observation. Didn't take the Sucker Punches. I don't think we should have taken the Sucker Punches, but I remember when I was analyzing Sucker Punch, it's like, you want to get different sources of weak from this, but sometimes you'll reach Act 3 and not have them, and you have to take Sucker Punch. And we were reaching a point in the run where having a Sucker Punch in our deck would have been better than not having a Sucker Punch. Definitely on that turn where you get attacked for 58, weak mitigates quite a lot of that damage, and that enemy was not weakened. I thought our potion usage was pretty good. No real complaints about the potion usage. This reflex and tactician stuff I'm not 100% sold on. If they were upgraded, I'd be much more happy with them. I think they were okay. in the deck as was. There's a possibility that we get like 1 Acrobatics Plus at the start of Act 3, and all of a sudden the Tactician and Reflex are starting to become quite a bit better. We can even start building a deck that cycles very rapidly and maybe approaches some sort of infinite cycling sort of setup with these cards if we get enough of them. Yeah, overall it was a really fun run. So if I had beaten Automaton, I'm not sure that I'm gonna like do another one of these silent runs over explaining the heart, and it's awkward because I didn't reach the heart, but this is also a 3-hour long video. If I do one, it might be like part 2 where we don't talk quite as much in detail about Act 1 and stuff and just go more quickly through. If I had made it to Act 3, the big things that I was looking for are this deck still doesn't have any front-loaded mitigation. So getting like an anchor from a store as a relic to block for 10 on turn 1, or getting Piercing Whales. Piercing Whale is such an important silent card as a front-loaded damage mitigator, and also it does incredibly well against the heart because it reduces enemy strength by 6, which applies to every single attack the enemy makes, and the heart makes 15 attacks in the same turn, so reducing the strength on those by 6 is a pretty big deal. Piercing Whale would have been very good. Like, another footwork would have been great, or getting this footwork upgraded finally. Ideally both. That would have been really nice, so our block cards block for a bit more. I think like 2 or 3 more strikes need to be removed from this deck for it to function properly. Other than that, though, with like a couple of good potions and maybe 1 Crippling Cloud and 1 Leg Sweep so that we're weakening more consistently, this deck is pretty close to being able to beat the heart. Could use some better relics, a little bit more power, but the deck's pretty close. Like, it's getting there. There's definitely a run where if a couple of things went our way, we could have won the run. And similarly, if a couple of things didn't go our way, we could have died 15 floors ago. So, you know, there's a bit of luck involved in Slay the Spire, but there's an awful lot more trying to work out what to do to let yourself be the beneficiary of that luck when it comes. Like, you have to work out how to set yourself up so that if you get lucky, you're able to convert that into the win. And I thought this was a pretty good run to watch, to observe that. So, thanks for tuning in. Again, I'm Joan Ribs, Steven, Jorbs, Steve. I stream Slay the Spire pretty much every day at www.twitch.tv/JoanRibs. You can find like my social media links. My community is mainly centered on Discord. You can find a link to our Discord. Everybody's welcome. We just chat about games and analyze things and are nerds together all day. It's a great place. Hop on in if you'd like. You can share photos of your cats, can vent about your day. I do want to plug, I'm doing a charity stream on Christmas Day to raise money for the Dream program. It will be the 3rd Christmas in a row that I'm spending my Christmas doing that. I'm going to either do 16 hours or 24 hours. I haven't quite decided yet. And that'll be a lot of Slay the Spire, plus a bit of other games to palate cleanse, because this is a tough game to play for 24 hours in a row. And other than that, I'd love to hear any thoughts in the comments. I'm happy to explain anything that I didn't explain, if there were things that I missed. I know I didn't talk a lot about like how good Peace Pipe or the Boot were or anything, but the answer is not. They're not good. Other than that, I feel like I talked about most of the stuff there was to talk about. Maybe a little bit less so toward the end of the video. And I hope to see you next time. I do plan to do one of these for Ironclad and one for Defect, but probably not like tomorrow because this is a lot of work. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.